Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Adriana woke up to the alarm clock ringing, jumped up in bed. She had to get up quickly, get her daughter up, put the kettle on, see Christopher off to work. Husband also woke up, half lying in bed, leaning on his elbows and sleepily flapping his eyes. Probably again last night, he went to bed late, played another game. Hurry up, I'll put the kettle on and wake Lisa up. Please clear the bathroom by then. Adriana, you again? Christopher looked at her with anxiety and irritation. What? The woman didn't understand. It's Saturday. You forgot to turn off the alarm clock again. The man turned on his side and closed his eyes. It's Saturday. That's right. Adriana suddenly remembered vividly how yesterday she had turned off the alarm clock before going to bed, but today it had rung insistently, waking her up at exactly 7 o'clock. What's going on with her? Adriana threw on a robe and walked out of the bedroom, shutting the door behind her. She wouldn't be able to sleep anyway, lying there thinking about what was happening to her. It would be better to watch a movie while everyone was asleep. It would take her mind off her worries. Something strange had been happening to her lately. It's hard to say when the first warning signs appeared, probably 6 months ago or a little earlier. The memory of a young woman who had recently turned only 30 years old suddenly failed. Adriana, now she was forgetting and confusing everything. Maybe it's the maternity leave. They say young moms who haven't worked for a long time start to degenerate. They fixate on the baby and don't notice anything else. Hence the problems. How could it be? The scene of her husband leaving for work in the morning was clearly in front of her eyes. Christopher asked for chicken. At first, such situations were rare. The woman didn't even pay attention to them. Let's think about it. Running in tired, but now it happened several times a day. Adriana did not find things that she thought she had left in certain places, and also lost documents, got confused about events, forgot to do some important things. One time she almost started a fire in the apartment in the first place. She and Christopher and Lisa were going for a walk in the park. Adriana was stewing vegetables and meat for dinner, and she turned off the stove before leaving. The woman remembered the exact moment. She walked over to the cauldron, opened the lid, breathed in the pleasant aroma of the finished dish, and turned the knob on the stove. She also checked that all the switches were facing up. The family went outside. Lisa, riding on her daddy's shoulders, was happy that they were all together. Adriana was in an elevated mood as well. Good thing Christopher had forgotten his cell phone at home and discovered it halfway to the park. The man came back, and there was a fire almost started in the apartment. Turns out Adriana hadn't turned off the stove after all. The water had boiled off, the vegetables and meat were charred, and the cauldron itself was beginning to smoke. Acrid smoke was spreading through the apartment, a pungent odor, and it took a long time to get out of the rooms. Adriana was even afraid to admit to herself that something was wrong with her. No one but Christopher knew about her memory problems. Her husband seemed to be supportive, reassuring, but the woman saw that he was already very annoyed. He urged the wife to see a doctor. Go see a doctor, asked Christopher. Maybe after childbirth, the body has malfunctioned. They'll prescribe some medicine, and that's it. But Adriana was in no hurry to go to the hospital. First, it would mean admitting that she had a problem with her head, and the woman was afraid of that. Secondly, Adriana worked in the police, for the time being as a simple secretary, but after her maternity leave, she was going to get a certified position, where her salary was much higher and she had many benefits. And if the doctor put her on the register, this plan would never come true. all the more so because the strange things happened only in some everyday moments. Adriana's mind was still clear. She'd checked on purpose. The woman perfectly coped with simulators on the internet, solved complex Sudoku, read to her daughter by heart long poems by Tchaikovsky. Recently, however, just the other day, a new frightening symptom was added. If it continues, then all will have to surrender to a specialist because, perhaps, she has a serious disease that makes a person dangerous to themselves and others. Especially Adriana was afraid for her daughter. Little if anything, she is with the baby almost all the time. Christopher often stays late at work, goes on business trips. He is building a career and gives now to this business all his time and energy. The first time it happened was in the evening. Christopher was on the floor with Lisa. They were building a tower of cubes. Adriana was washing the dishes after dinner. An idyllic picture. The whole family together. How rare that is lately. Her husband usually comes home from work when Lisa is asleep, but this time it was early. Through the noise of the water and the chatter of her husband and daughter, Adriana heard a woman's laughter, turned to Christopher, who was throwing Lisa to the ceiling and catching her. "Did you hear that?" Adriana asked. "What?" Christopher was surprised. It was immediately clear that he had not heard any laughter. Like a woman laughing. "That's Lisa laughing," shrugged his husband. "What woman?" Adriana shrugged. She had heard a woman's laughter, which could not be confused with the laughter of a little girl. A little later, when her daughter was asleep, the laughter came again. This time it was much longer and louder. She and Christopher were watching the evening news in the living room. Adriana glanced at her husband. He was watching the events on the screen as if nothing had happened. Apparently, the laughter could be heard again, only she alone. Adriana did not tell Christopher about what had happened, or he would definitely drag her to the doctor. For the same reason, Adriana had not yet disturbed her twin sister Wendy. For as long as the woman could remember, she had always trusted her with all her secrets. Wendy was the closest person to her who would always understand, always support, always help. But Adriana did not tell her twin about the strange symptoms. Why bother her? She was expecting a child now, and she didn't need any unnecessary excitement. Wendy, like Christopher, would insist on seeing a doctor. A doctor. Perhaps it was high time to run to him, but Adriana kept postponing this moment. She hoped that her health would return to normal. It's a good thing she has Christopher. His parents are so wonderful, they've taken her in like their own daughter. If anything were to happen to her, Lisa would not be left without support. She has a wonderful father, loving grandparents, Aunt Wendy. Lots of family people who, if anything, will raise the wee one. Though she didn't want to think about that scenario, of course. Adriana poured herself a cup of coffee, made some toast, and sat down in front of the TV in the living room. A very romantic scene was unfolding on the screen, the acquaintance of the main characters of the movie. Adriana remembered her own acquaintance with her future husband. The police where the woman worked was located in a large building. There were many other offices, both private and public. A spacious porch with a railing and a staircase overlooked the backyard. It was here that the employees of the institutions and firms in the building set up a sort of smoking area. The stairs were constantly crowded with people who had wandered out of their offices for a breath of fresh air, a little distraction, and conversation, most of them smoking. Adriana had no such bad habit. She went out for company with her colleagues, just to unwind, to stretch. At the time she met Christopher, Adriana was still new to the police force. Before that, she worked as a lawyer in a private furniture company, but she had to leave. It was a workplace romance. On the young, pretty Adriana laid eyes on the CEO himself, an adult, wealthy, successful, self-confident. He wooed so beautifully, elegantly, unobtrusively, and at the same time persistently. Of course, the girl could not resist, although she knew that the chief was married. The relationship lasted for 2 years. Adriana was burdened by the role of mistress. She tried not to think about the wife of her man, because then she began to torment her conscience. Everything ended very ugly. Colleagues began to notice the relationship between the boss and the young lawyer. Rumors spread and Adriana was fired. Just like that, a man who sang beautifully about love cut the girl out of his life. It took Adriana a long time to recover from what had happened. She felt as if she had been used and then thrown out for lack of use. In fact, that's what it was really like. Humiliation, pain, a sense of worthlessness. It was Wendy who pulled her out of that state, which lasted about a year. She constantly braced her sister, turned on her life-affirming videos, dragged her shopping, convinced her that Adriana was beautiful and smart. She even brought in a psychologist under the guise of her friend. Otherwise, Adriana wouldn't have agreed to the meeting. For a whole year, Adriana didn't work, didn't study, didn't do anything. She had a strong feeling that she was slowly sinking to the bottom. And Wendy made her sister push herself off that bottom with both feet, gave her the impetus to move on with her life. Convinced that Adriana had a bright future ahead of her, and all that had happened was just a painful experience that made her stronger and wiser. Adriana took herself in hand, tidied up her appearance and head, updated her closet, and got a job as a secretary in the police, in the future to be certified and receive a rank. Here she met her future husband. Handsome colleagues, of course, showed attention employees, but the girl, learned by bitter experience, now avoided office romances and did not even consider these options. Christopher worked in a construction company located in the same building. The design of the office and the appearance of its employees said that the firm was succeeding. It was. Adriana often met Christopher in the smoking room. They did not communicate, not even say hello, but the girl caught his interested look, and she liked it very much. Sometimes the young people met eyes and smiled slightly at each other. Christopher was usually not alone, but that day, when the guy still dared to talk to Adriana, his colleagues and friends were not around. Despite her memory problems, Adriana remembered their first conversation very well. Wonderful weather, isn't it? Christopher smiled, coming closer. Adriana was glad that her co-workers had already finished and left. She was alone on the porch precisely because she wanted to enjoy the May Day a little more. Yes, Adriana agreed. The weather is really great, but it's supposed to get colder tomorrow. The weather had been talked about. The social decorum had been observed. Christopher summarized. Now for the really important stuff. Can I speak to you? Yes, of course. Adriana looked at her interlocutor with interest. I like you very much. I've been watching you for a long time, and I'm attracted to you like a magnet. Adriana didn't know what to say. The cute guy's revelation surprised her, but also pleased her. She felt a pleasant warmth in her chest. I suggest that we exchange phone numbers and meet outside these walls. That same evening, Christopher took Adriana on a date to a restaurant, and then they walked around the city at night, talking, laughing, even singing songs. Christopher was interesting, fun, and relaxed. Adriana felt that she was making the guy happy just by her mere presence. A wonderful feeling. The relationship developed rapidly. After a few months, Christopher proposed to move in together. He had a spacious apartment, stylish, cozy, modern. Adriana grew up in a poor family and was not used to such an interior. Christopher, on the other hand, didn't know any different. His father was a well-known businessman in the city. He gave his son one of his promising companies. At the age of 27, Christopher was already the head of a successful construction company. With his father's help, of course, but still. It was his parents who gave Christopher the apartment. But I already bought the car myself. With pride, said Christopher, playing with the key fob from his favorite SUV. Always dreamed of such a car. Not a car, but a beast. A year into their relationship, Christopher proposed to Adriana. Everything had been going on for a long time, so the girl was not even surprised. The only thing she was very worried about was the upcoming acquaintance with Christopher's parents. They are very wealthy people. How will the future parents-in-law treat a daughter-in-law from a poor family? All worries were in vain. Christina and Benjamin accepted Adriana as their own. Christopher's mother complimented the girl, and his father constantly put the most delicious salads and appetizers on the guest's plate. We are so happy that Christopher finally decided to settle down. Christina confessed, "We wish you happiness. You will have a strong, harmonious family. And if there are any difficulties, we are always there for you. You can count on us." Adriana also liked Christopher's parents very much. They did not correspond to her stereotypes about rich people, behaved very simply, naturally, and sincerely. After the wedding, the newlyweds started to plan a child right away. Adriana wanted to become a mother, and her parents-in-law dreamed of grandchildren. Adriana had no doubt that her son or daughter would have loving and caring grandparents. But time passed, and the cherished pregnancy never came. Christopher seemed to support his wife, but it seemed to Adriana that he himself was not so much dreaming of a baby. "So what? Well, later we'll give birth," carelessly said Christopher. "We are still so young. There is plenty of time." Adriana could not wait calmly for a miracle. She went to doctors, underwent examinations. No abnormalities were found. They advised her to check her husband. But Christopher refused to go to the hospital. "There's nothing wrong with me. Don't make it up." Adriana once shared her misfortune with her mother-in-law. "Is that what it is? And we thought you didn't want children yet." She said, "It's good that you came to me. I know specialists will help." There was so much confidence in Christina's words that Adriana was encouraged. Examinations in private medical centers were strikingly different from visiting the city women's clinic. Modern equipment, polite, attentive staff, stylish, pleasant interiors, and no queues. The doors to Christina opened as if by themselves. She only had to approach the office, and everywhere they were treated as important persons. The problem turned out to be hormones. Adriana took the prescribed medication, and the next month she tearfully admired the 2 stripes on the test. "You see, I told you, everything will be fine," smiled Christopher. "I'm going to be a daddy now. How cool it is." Adriana expected a more emotional reaction from her husband. After all, they were almost 2 years to this happiness. But Christopher had become indifferent lately. He was always absent at work, more often on business trips. All his thoughts were about the firm, Adriana's personal affairs. He was no longer interested, and compliments her, as before, did not shower, but respected, supported in everything helped. Perhaps this is the ideal marriage. Romantic period. Well, it is, of course, a golden time, but it cannot last forever. Now their relationship is moving to a whole new level. They're about to become parents. Unbelievable. Christina and Benjamin. The news of the upcoming addition to the family was ecstatic. The mother-in-law even wept, and the father-in-law gave his daughter-in-law a car. And me? jokingly offended Christopher. I was involved too. Then Lisa was born. Christopher was not a very caring father. Her temples rattled. The familiar world was crumbling. Now everything would change, and I didn't want that to happen. Adriana liked her family so much, the world they had both built. But it all seemed to be just an illusion of happiness. Darling, you know we have to be patient. If the girl stays with Adriana, her parents will give them the inheritance, and I'll be left with nothing. It just takes a little time, that's all. You said so yourself, and you were right. What? It's not making any sense. All right, the mistress, the relationship on the side, it's probably a boomerang. I had an affair with the chief when I was younger. I was a mistress. But what does this have to do with Lisa? Why does Christopher call his daughter such a rude name? Girl. And most importantly, what does his parents' inheritance have to do with it? Honey, the plan's working, isn't it? You're so smart. You thought of everything so well. Adriana can't believe herself. I'm going to get her to see a doctor. The official records will be our biggest advantage. We have to be patient a little longer, or we'll ruin everything. It would be a shame, because we're almost there. And Adriana didn't understand. Mistress, plan, almost there. What's going on? A relationship on the side, at least that's understandable. Painful, hurtful, but in principle, the situation is almost standard in the modern world. And she's the first, not the last wife to be so brazenly lied to by her husband. But according to Christopher, it's not just about the relationship on the side. Yeah, it's hard, but Adriana's pretty sure she's lost her mind. We have to think of something else. The laugh tape idea is awesome. I wish you could have seen her face. I had a lot of trouble holding back and pretending there was no laughter. I turned the tape on twice that day, then took a break. I'll try again tomorrow. Then the conversation turned to another topic. Christopher began discussing an upcoming trip with his mistress to the sea, which he was going to present to the family as a business trip. Adriana slipped quietly into the bedroom, opened herself with a blanket, and turned her back to the wall. She had heard enough already. There was no way Christopher would notice her and realize she was aware of it. It turns out Christopher is purposely making her believe that there is something wrong with her head. He needs to make her seem crazy for some reason. Why? He said that the laughter Adriana heard recently was just an audio recording. The husband would turn it on and pretend he didn't hear anything. How did these sounds, which supposedly existed only in her head, frighten Adriana? And everything else? The woman suddenly realized that all the strange things were happening to her when Christopher was around. How had she not noticed it before? To her surprise, Adriana felt relief and even something like joy. Yes, her spouse was clearly up to no good, and she was being tricked. But she's healthy. She's fine. A chill suddenly ran through Adriana's body, even though she was covered with a warm blanket. What if all this overheard conversation was just a figment of her imagination, a sick imagination? How hard it was to figure out. I guess it was impossible to hide what was going on from everyone. I must call Wendy tomorrow. She had always had a sharp mind, and her sister would be sure to help her figure it all out. A couple of minutes later, Christopher returned to the bedroom, carefully lowered himself onto the bed, covered himself with a blanket. Soon his peaceful breathing sounded. His husband quickly fell asleep. But Adriana did not sleep a wink until morning. Heavy thoughts were studying in her head. There were more questions than answers. Christopher woke up from the insistent ringing of the alarm clock. His wife was not in bed. She was busy in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The man stretched and got up. Soon his life will change for the better. will be carefree and fun, carefree, almost like before in his teenage years. Soon there wouldn't be that boring Adriana around, and there will be another woman living here. Someone who's always fun. A celebration person. Emily. Christopher had known Emily for a long time, long before he met Adriana. The first time they saw each other was at a nightclub on the dance floor. Christopher immediately noticed the graceful girl, relaxed movements, confident look. She was dressed in a short leather skirt and a short top, a bold outfit. Of course, Emily's beauties were staring at most of the guys having fun in the club, but she chose him, Christopher, came up to him, looked into his eyes and suddenly kissed him. An unconventional start. Christopher even felt dizzy. She was so bold, confident, uncompromising in everything. Always took what she wanted right away. Christopher fell madly in love with her. It had never happened to him before. He couldn't think of anyone but his new acquaintance. Fortunately, the interest and attraction was mutual. Nightclubs, apartment parties, bars, rock concerts. Emily loved the entertainment, just as Christopher did. They partied hard, traveled, raced bikes, swam at night in lakes and rivers, walked on rooftops. Drinks flowed. Cost entertainment, of course, not cheap, but the guy had no problems with money then, with such a mom and dad. Parents did not dote in their only son and tried to fulfill his every wish. So it happened from the moment Christopher went to the 3rd grade. Then the business of his father finally began to bring a small, decent income. Christopher's father used to work as a designer at a factory. Mom worked as a teacher in the economics department at the local university. They both made a pittance. Tired of the lack of money, Benjamin decided to start his own business. Of course, Christina helped her husband in everything. Especially she was well versed in accounting. The parents went into business with their heads. At home almost did not appear. Since 10 years Christopher was left to himself. Grandparents who would look after a small grandchild in the family was not. So the boy began an independent life. At first Christopher was bored in loneliness. He sometimes even became scared alone in an empty apartment. The boy played dinner by himself, sat over his lessons by himself, sometimes even went to bed by himself. Mom and Dad often came home very late. And then, after some time, Christopher realized all the advantages of his position and began to actively use them. He got a taste of freedom. Every step of his friends were controlled by adults, moms, dads, grandparents, and he could go wherever he wanted after school and do what he wanted. He also had money. Parents, feeling guilty before their son, tried to pay him off with gifts and financial injections. Of course, Christopher soon had a company of people who loved freedom as much as he did. The boy was not stingy. Treating new acquaintances, chips, and soda, took them to the movies and attractions. The boys, in return, showed little Christopher life. It turned out that sometimes you can skip school and the world won't turn upside down because of it. Instead of sitting at the desk and listening to the boring explanations of the teacher, Christopher walked around the city with his friends. They climbed abandoned buildings, walked at the train station, wandered through the secret corners of the old park. The kids smashed bottles against the fence, burned fires away from human eyes, played with the local dogs, teased the homeless. Oh, what fun it was! Christopher did not even want to remember about his gray, boring life before meeting his buddies. Of course, his parents noticed that their son was changing. His mother tried to take measures, enrolled him in circles and sections to occupy his free time, and once even hired him, already a teenager, a nanny. But Christopher methodically ignored visits to sports clubs and development centers, and he drove the nanny crazy on her first day of work, and the woman absolutely refused to work with him. "Nothing, we grew up the same way," waved his father, "and he'll be fine, he'll get over it. It's just a period of time, a transitional age. I wasn't a goody-goody either." Even at his young age, the boy realized that both parents thought it was advantageous to think so. They invested so much time and effort in the business that there was no energy left for solving problems with their son, who was fighting off his hands. That's fine. Christopher was quite satisfied with it, and the guy was again left alone for a while. However, they began to give much less money, only for transportation and school lunch. It happened after the father smelled cigarettes from his son. "If you start, it will be hard to quit. He warned me. The consequences are terrible, especially for those who start at such an early age. Your body is still forming. I understand that you tried it once out of curiosity, but don't you dare try it again." Christopher nodded his head obediently. He could hardly contain his smile. Tried it once. His father hadn't guessed at all. The teenager had been smoking for a long time. He just did it in the morning so that his parents didn't smell too much and chewed mint gum. This time he ran out of gum, so he got caught, and he always knew where to get money. His parents kept cash in a box on the bookcase. His parents' business was booming. By the time Christopher graduated from high school, it was a mini empire. Branches all over the city, regular customers, a big name, an impeccable reputation. The business was up and running. Parents were finally able to breathe a little. They had free time. They looked at their grown-up son and were horrified. Christopher turned into a careless party boy, for whom the norm is to skip a week at school. The guy was kept, not expelled only thanks to the fact that his parents sponsored the institution. On the eve of entering the university, Christopher was not interested in anything but girls, clubs, discos. He socialized with the same as himself, pro-lifers. The guy enjoyed authority among his friends. Of course he did, because he usually sponsored the parties. Christina took her son seriously. It turned out that in school, the son all these years only listed. He'd been skipping school, wandering around. Naturally, he didn't do his homework. The gaps in his education were appalling, and Christopher sincerely did not understand why he should study. He saw that in the modern world everything is decided by money. His parents had no shortage of finances. His father will buy him a university diploma and then put in one of their office's director, and Christopher will still think about whether to hire any of these nerdy, excellent students that he has always put as an example. But the mother did not agree with this approach. Parents put the guy, tough conditions, either he plays by their rules or remains without means of subsistence. And he's almost 18, a grown man. They've done their job, nurtured and raised him to adulthood, then the choice is his. Christopher did not take the words of his parents seriously and continued his usual life. He did not want to change anything, and is it possible now? His mother cried, begged him to stop, offered help. His father wrinkled his nose and kept silent, trying to have serious conversations with his son. How they pissed him off. And then there was the exam. Of course, Christopher passed it with the lowest scores, but the boy didn't worry about it. His father would think of something, after all, just pay tuition at some university. Christopher will be there for 5 years, because in the university is even easier, paid and walk for the next 6 months. And then he will get a diploma and become a department head in some daddy's firm or even the director of a branch. But, to the boy's surprise, his father was in no hurry to get him into university. "You're already 18. You're an adult. You're on your own," said Benjamin. "By the way, we've split the utility bills, so you'll pay too. If you don't go to school, then go work. I don't have to support a big-age brat. At first, Christopher thought his parents didn't mean it, but they really stopped giving him money, and the life-saving jewelry box disappeared from its usual place. Without money, it's boring. Without money, there are fewer friends. Without money, you have to eat the crap your mother cooks, soups, stews, pasta. Christopher has long been hooked on fast food and takeaways. He desperately wanted to drink, but he needed money for that too. The guy even got a job. Where to go? Courier at a local cafe. There wasn't much more qualified for the job. Now he was carrying a heavy box on his shoulders, walking and cycling to different addresses. He was often looked at with disdain. He didn't feel very good about himself. The pay is paltry, the work is not easy. There is not enough money for entertainment anyway, and sometimes there is no strength left. Not life, but gray boredom and misery. His parents also demanded from him to invest in buying groceries and paying for the apartment. Although they did not need it, they just went on principle. Christopher hated his mother and father for their behavior. More than once he tried to suck up, to negotiate, but his parents remained adamant, and Christopher gave up. He agreed to their terms, and there were many demands. First, the refusal of nightclubs and dubious company, from the word at all. If parents smell Christopher's odor of booze, then immediately put him on the street and let him spin as he wants. Secondly, tutoring. It will be necessary to pass the exam again and try to enter the university and by himself. If he fails, he'll go to the army in the spring draft. This year, his father bothered to defer, but he will not do it again. Third, attending a day hospital clinic. Independently cope with addictions, as parents thought, Christopher will not succeed, so they found good specialists for him. But in order to start work, the written consent of the boy is needed. He is, after all, already an adult. Christopher agreed to all these conditions. What else could he do? The parents were overjoyed. They encouraged their son. His mother and father now spoke to him affectionately. They didn't give him money, but at least they didn't make him go to work and bought him delicious food, the kind of food he was used to. Christopher's days were filled to the brim. He studied a lot with tutors. At first, the idea for 6 months to catch up with the school program seemed crazy. But then the guy realized that the study is given to him relatively easy. Christopher even and a little liked it. And Christopher visited the clinic almost every day. IVs, soul-sleeping conversations, all this dragged and terribly annoying. Instead of the hospital, Christopher would have loved to go to the club with friends. Despite all the efforts of specialists, desperately craved a drink. Outwardly, Christopher became calmer and more compliant. He pretended to accept the rules of the game imposed by his parents, but himself only waited for the moment when they let their guard down to return to the usual way of life. At night, he dreamed of nightclubs and walks with friends. The guy realized all this will come back, you just have to be patient. Of course, the miracle did not happen. Christopher did not pass the exam for high scores, but the result was average, even a little higher, which in his situation looked like a real victory. His father gladly paid for the university tuition and even secretly from his mother sponsored the session. I played the role of a diligent student who simply do not give difficult sciences, and pretended to be an exemplary son, grateful to my parents for their care, for the chance to be in life. It was not easy, but it yielded results. His father gave the guy a car and promised an apartment for successful graduation from university. Mother threw money on the card for expenses, and Christopher Guy slowly returned to the old life. Only did it more carefully now. Parents had nothing against their sons' trips to the dacha, to classmates, or 2-day student hikes. They did not know that Christopher communicates not with these nerds, with whom he was always unbearably bored. He found his old friends. Or rather, they found him when they realized that he was back in the money. Entertainment was back in his life again. Growing up, Christopher was being more careful. He didn't want to arouse the suspicion of his mother and father. And he managed it up to a certain point. By that time, the guy had already graduated from university. He lived in his own apartment, given to him by his father, drove a luxury car, and as expected, worked as director of one of his father's firms. True, all the work was done by the deputy. A smart and responsible guy, James. His father trusted him like himself. Asked him to tell Christopher what and how the company is organized. James at first tried to bring information to his new young chief, but then waved his hand and continued to run the branch on his own. Christopher was fine with that, and James was fine with it too. A few merry years flew by. Christopher liked his new life away from his parents. It was easier to hide habits, and now there was more money, the director's salary allowed to luxuriate. Christopher's girls became prettier, entertainment sophisticated, booze more expensive and refined. The guy enjoyed the new status and changes in his life. Everything was working out just fine. You just have to be careful not to show up in front of your parents drunk, not to come to work after partying. And then the guy meets her, Emily, and he's gone. Fell in love like a boy. She didn't bother him with attention, didn't threaten him with responsibility. It was Emily who offered the guy an open relationship. Why do we need these stupid restrictions? The girl once said, and if you or I like someone else, why should we hold back? Life is one, we should live it to the fullest, take advantage of the chance. The guy agreed with her 100%. He thought she was the wisest person he knew. Emily did not hide that she was attracted to him, including his money. She liked to drive around the city in a beautiful car and dine in restaurants. But according to the girl herself, much more she loved in Christopher his inner freedom. Not everyone has that. There are probably only a few people like us. We're not limited by stereotypes. It seemed to Christopher that the golden couple would last forever. But his mother had a new condition. Unlike Emily, Christopher was still not completely free. He had to adjust to his parents and their idea of an ideal son. Otherwise he would have lost his financial support and would have gone back to work as a courier. Apparently, Christina was beginning to suspect something. Perhaps there were rumors at work that the boss likes a fun life and does not devote much time to business. Anyway, one day the mother invited Christopher to a serious conversation. The son prepared himself. In order to disguise the dark circles under his eyes, the consequences of a sleepless night, and he even had to use Emily foundation. He must look fresh and trim. His mother invited him into the living room. The table was already set there. His mother had made pilaf, which Christopher had once adored, but now he couldn't stand that greasy home-cooked meal. I heard that you're back to your old ways. Mother's eyes were filled with worry. I'm not telling my father yet, and I don't want to worry him. He's got enough problems as it is. You're seen in dubious company. Are you drinking again? Are you drinking again? No, really? Christopher assured me with a sincere smile. I don't know who's telling you all this, but they're lying. The pilaf is amazing, by the way. Just a taste from my childhood. Christopher, how hard did it take us to get you back to normal? Men can barely contain their irritation. Normal life? That gray, boring reality, which he, according to the wishes of his parents, existed for several years, was not a normal life for him. And even now he had to lurk. Although he is already over 25 years old, and he is the director of the company. It is good that now he has Emily, money, clubs, and friends. Only in this atmosphere Christopher feels alive and real. "It's okay, Mom." Christopher stroked her hand. "What are you worried about?" "You should get married," Christina said confidently. "It's about time you settled down. Apartment, car, job, you have everything you need for family life. Children will be born, there will be a purpose in life. For their sake, you will be ready to roll mountains." Christopher looked at his mother dumbfounded. Wow, what did she think of? And how did she come up with such a thing? What marriage? What children? There will be kids will not pull in the club. This is such happiness. It's a whole new world. My father and I are already dreaming of grandchildren. It's always like this, me and my father, and his opinion never mattered to anyone. And the most frustrating thing is, you really have to get married. Parents had leverage over their wayward son. Very effective leverage, a faucet to shut off the money pipe. "Mom, I don't feel ready, Anne." "You won't feel ready. It's all your boyfriend's fault and your party life. It's time to settle down. You're all grown up now. If you don't, your father will find out about your outings at work." "You think I don't know?" Christopher hated his mother at that moment. Can't you get behind your grown-up son and let him live the life he wants? It was as if Christina had read his mind. "Of course we can leave things as they are. You'll have your own life, we'll have ours. But just what are you without your father's support?" Rude but fair. Of course, without his father's patronage, Christopher will immediately lose his job. He won't be able to pay his rent. He'll sell his car. And then it's back to the dreary, moneyless existence. Been there, done that. He doesn't have the luxury of being who he really is, especially now he has Emily. She likes presents, parties, nice cars. I guess I'll have to go back to accepting my parents' terms. "You're right, Mom. You're always right. It really is time for me to start my own family." "That's great." Mom was happy. "I knew you'd get it right. I have a few girls in mind. They are the daughters of my acquaintances. And no, Mom stopped the enthusiastic parent, Christopher. "Let me at least make this choice myself, because it's quite something like the old-fashioned turns out. Parents also find a bride for their son. I cannot." "Well, all right." Mother agreed easily. "Of course, look for a bride yourself. Just don't forget to introduce us before the wedding." Christopher exhaled. At least here he managed to defend his opinion. If he married the daughter of his parents' acquaintances, they would know about his son's hobbies and lifestyle. No, he'll find a modest, quiet girl who can keep quiet. The candidacy of Emily, Christopher immediately dismissed. This is not a bride that would suit father and mother. She would never pretend to be a good girl in front of them, and in general, a stamp in the passport would break all the romance, their free and bright relationship. No, he'd have another wife to cover for him, and Emily would be his mistress. That's even more interesting. What ancestors you have. Emily shook her head. How, under such total control, did you grow up to be a free person? It's a mystery. Probably despite my parents. And the idea of marriage isn't bad. Find yourself some asylum, you won't have any trouble. A decent, modest girl who'll look at her husband's mouth. Parents will calm down, they'll relax their control. It'll be easier with your wife than with them. Much easier. Christopher smiled. Next to Emily saw their future happy and cloudless. The guy now faced a new problem. Where to look for a wife? Colleagues were out of the question at once. All of them communicated with James, and the latter, in turn, was on a short note with Benjamin. Then there would be too much information about Christopher's personal life. It wouldn't do any good. Club girls and Emily's friends were no good either. They wouldn't suit his parents. Christopher even registered on a dating site to find a suitable candidate. He specified marriage as the purpose of dating. This made his profile popular, but none of the ladies who responded did not suit Christopher. Mostly they were women older than him, with little attractive appearance. To live with one of them, even realizing that this is just a performance, the man could not. One day he noticed her, a pretty girl named Adriana. She worked in the same building as Christopher. Slender, sweet, with a soft, short stare, very pleasant and apparently single. Christopher had been watching her for a while and had never seen anyone greet her in the evening after work. At first, Christopher made eye contact with the girl. They would look each other over when they happened to meet on the porch overlooking the backyard. The girl was so sweetly. At first, everything suited him. His parents became more favorable to him. His father willingly gave him money if he just mentioned it. For the family is not a pity. Benjamin smiled complacently. Now you're a family man, you have many times more expenses. At home he had a wife quiet, modest, gentle, devoted. Now the apartment was always shining clean, and the kitchen was filled with the dizzying aromas of home-cooked food. Adriana turned out to be an excellent hostess. It was a pleasure to return to this cozy nest. After another party, Adriana thought that her husband was late at work or traveling on business. How easy was it to fool this gullible simpleton? Christopher and Emily sometimes laughed to tears at the devoted wife, patiently waiting for her husband at the kitchen window. Life had settled into its routine. Christopher adapted to the new circumstances. Everything suited him perfectly. A couple of years after the wedding, both Adriana and Christina suddenly became concerned that the young people still do not get a baby. Christopher was overjoyed by this circumstance. Well, he did not see himself in the role of a caring father. A child is not just a cute picture from the internet. Sleepless nights will begin, children's diseases. With a baby can forget about peace and quiet. But the mother still took Adriana to some doctors she knew. They found some minor health problems in her spouse and prescribed medication. After a while, Adriana told her husband the news that they would soon be 3. The man gave what he thought was a masterly portrayal of joy. And then Lisa was born, a screaming, restless little girl. And it was even worse than Christopher had imagined. First of all, Adriana had completely stopped looking after herself. Christopher had not felt strongly about her before, but to see a tired and tortured woman with disheveled hair and a sagging belly after childbirth was beyond his strength. Secondly, all the parents' attention was now focused on the newborn and her mother. Father and mother made frequent visits to them. Adriana was pleased with their help, but Christopher, the presence of relatives, strained. They had become too close to his wife. Now Benjamin more and more often transferred money not to his son, but directly to his daughter-in-law. And new responsibilities. Before the birth of their daughter, Adriana had never bothered Christopher. Now she kept saying that he should take part in the life of the child, because it is supposedly very important for the baby to feel the support and attention of the father. The mother fully shared the opinion of the daughter-in-law. Now Christopher had to play not only the role of an exemplary son and husband, but also pretend to be a caring daddy. The man walked around the yard with a stroller, and himself dreamed of being in the apartment which he rented for Emily. The parents' calculation did not come true. The mother kept saying that when Christopher had a child, he would find some new meaning in life. It did not happen. The man's daughter was nothing but annoyance. Lisa was a cute and funny little girl after all, and she looked just like him, Christopher. This life was weighing on the man. He wanted to get a divorce to be more free and happier. Adriana pissed him off more and more every day. He barely restrained himself not to be rude to her. But if Christopher leaves his family, He will not see the money and support of his father. And without him, he's nothing. Benjamin's right about that. He's not going anywhere. She annoys me. Christopher complained to Emily. He told his wife that he went on another business trip, and he came to his mistress for 3 days to rest his body. Emily suggested that Adriana be presented as an unhealthy woman who could not be trusted with a child. Then no one would accuse Christopher of taking his daughter and leaving a wife who was a danger to him and the baby. Will Adriana be put in a clinic, or will it be some kind of home treatment? Either way, Christopher will get rid of the annoying spouse and won't have to part with all the financial perks from his parents. That's great, of course. Christopher agreed. But what am I going to do with Lisa alone? Do you know how much Adriana takes care of her? I can't do that. You don't have to. Your parents will take care of her. Christina loves her granddaughter. She'll give you a career and she'll devote herself to the girl. You're probably right. That's probably what will happen. But how can I imagine Adriana being insane? She's shallow and naive for her age, but she's not stupid, is she? You're beginning to ask the right questions. Emily said with a smile of a boa constrictor. Her eyes shone like 2 bright stars, incredibly beautiful, not like the simpleton Adriana. I have a few ideas. It's very simple. Christopher was amazed at Emily's imagination. He'd known her for so many years, but he'd never realized how imaginative she was. A woman like that is better to have as a friend than as an enemy. And she certainly shouldn't be crossed. They began to act with harmless manipulations. When the wife fell asleep, Christopher moved her alarm clock an hour earlier or later. And in the morning, Adriana could not understand how it happened. She remembered exactly that the day before she had set the clock for a different time. Then the requests. Christopher didn't do it every day, otherwise it would look too suspicious, but periodically he asked Adriana to cook 1 dish for dinner, and in the evening he demanded another. And he would assure her that it was this other dish that he had been talking about in the morning. Christopher discreetly swapped things wife and child, hid Adriana keys and documents, called from her phone to unknown numbers, posted on the page wife strange photos and pictures on her behalf. And once, before the family went for a walk, he turned on the gas burner under a pot of stewed vegetables. Then he came back for his supposedly forgotten cell phone and prevented a fire. The scene was spectacular. The burnt pot, the apartment full of smoke, the bitter odor of burning, which took a long time. The man did as Emily suggested. He recorded on a dictaphone the cheerful, ringing laughter of his mistress, and several times turned it on Adriana. Emily was right. The sounds really frightened her spouse. She became pale and even more anxious. She lost her appetite and slept. Adriana, now restless, jumped up from every rustle. And when Christopher looked through his browser history, he saw that his wife was looking at the websites of doctors in their city. So the ice had broken. Adriana has made up her mind after all. She's choosing a specialist. That's good. The plan is working. There's not much left to do. The next morning, when Christopher left for work, Adriana called Wendy and asked her to come to visit her. Her sister gladly agreed, and by 12 o'clock she was already there. Adriana felt great joy and relief at the sight of her family member. "You are growing." Adriana smiled, pointing with her eyes at her sister's enlarged belly. She was due in a month. Wendy was moving slowly now and a little wobbly. Of course. The guest smilingly stroked her belly and turned to the little man inside it. Soon you will see your mother and aunt." The sisters went into the living room and made themselves cozy in the armchairs. On the table there was a fragrant pie with chicken and potatoes, and cups of tea were smoking. At first the women took a bite. chatting about the most common everyday topics: cold weather, approaching winter. And then Adriana made up her mind. "We need to have a serious talk," she said. Her sister immediately tensed up, realizing that it was about something really important and troubling. Tell me everything. You know I'm always on your side." And Adriana began to tell her story. Her story, put into words, sounded like the plot of a thriller. Wendy's face grew more and more anxious as Adriana described her symptoms. But when she told about the overheard telephone conversation, Christopher with the mysterious interlocutor, the sister exhaled with relief and even smiled. "It all makes sense," she summarized. "At first, I was afraid that something was really wrong with you, and that something is hardly treatable. Maybe it is?" Adriana took a sip from the cup. The tea was getting cold. "I'm thinking about that conversation at night. What if I dreamed it too, or even dreamed it? What if I'm going crazy?" "No," Wendy said, "sure. You have a clear mind, coherent speech, and weirdness only happens when your husband is home. He has a mistress who, for some reason, they want to officially declare you insane. I don't know why they would do that. If you just divorced and lived with your mom, it would have been easier. I can't believe that that he could do this to me. Why, I always saw some falsity in him, and I even gently tried to tell you about it, but you wouldn't listen, remember? You were blinded by love then. It was like that, yes." Adriana admitted. "How do I know exactly what's going on? Is Christopher trying to make me look crazy, or am I really not healthy?" "That's easy," Wendy shrugged. "Record his requests, for example. Ask him what he wants for dinner and turn the recorder on, and then when he comes back, check it out. Better yet, put cameras in several rooms at home and see what he does while you're away. You'll know the worst symptom of all. If that laughter is only in your head, you won't hear it on the tape. I'm scared." Adriana was honest, and I'm scared of both situations. To find out that I am really sick, and to find out that my husband is such a scoundrel and traitor. I personally understood what it is and without the camera. In a confident tone, said the sister, "But we need proof. And then we'll figure out what to do about it." Adriana did as Wendy advised. The sister had supplied her with the cameras herself. She bought them to keep an eye on the baby that was about to be born. The woman had installed cameras in the bedroom, living room, and kitchen. Now, finally, she would find out the truth. Either way, her life would never be the same again. The change was frightening, but there was no other way. If she's sick, she needs to get treatment. If her husband is a traitor and a cynic, she must run away from him. That night, Christopher returned late. Adriana was already lying in bed when she heard the key turning in the lock, probably came from his mistress. And in the morning, the first thing the woman saw when she went to make herself some coffee was the terrible mess in the kitchen. There were broken plates on the floor, scraps of paper lying everywhere, and a pile of potato peelings on the windowsill, which, Adriana remembered, had been in the trash. She had thrown them in there herself. The woman couldn't help but sigh in surprise at the sound of Christopher coming into the kitchen. "What is it?" asked the man, amazed, looking at the strange picture. This is what? Is it you again?" "No," Adriana answered confidently. Now she really wanted to see the security camera footage, and that would clear everything up. But who? The man looked anxiously into his wife's eyes. "I got home late last night. Everything was fine. You must have been out of sorts again last night. I slept peacefully all night," Adriana said. "Baby, there's something wrong with you lately. There's too much weirdness. Why don't we go to the doctor together? I'll walk you if you're scared, but you have to see a specialist. Please." Adriana silently started cleaning. Christopher began to get ready for work, and then the same laughter came again, muffled, merry, gushing. Now it seemed mocking to Adriana. The woman lifted her head, listened, and the sound died as suddenly as it had begun. "Did you hear that?" she asked her husband, knowing full well his answer. "What?" He was surprised. "Nothing." Adriana sighed and continued cleaning. As soon as the door closed behind her husband, the woman immediately rushed to the camera, pulled out a flash drive, inserted it into the laptop, pressed the view button. An image of their kitchen appeared on the screen, a view from above. It was quiet and peaceful at first. Adriana put the video on fast forward, and lo and behold, a human figure appeared in the frame. The woman turned on the normal mode and took a closer look. It was Christopher. Of course it was Christopher. The numbers on the face of the wall clock glowed, 4:30 a.m. The man walked over to the dishwasher cabinet, pulled several plates out of it, wrapped them in several layers of towel to muffle the sound, and tapped them heartily with a rolling pin. Then he removed the shards and carefully arranged them on the floor. Christopher didn't stop there. He shook the garbage out of the bucket, right onto the floor, and then picked out the potato peelings and placed them on the windowsill. The man looked around the kitchen with a fastidious eye, then nodded to himself. Apparently, he was pleased with the result. Perfectly imitated the actions of a deranged woman. Well done. Adriana fast-forwarded again. The window brightened, and she appeared in the kitchen. The woman paused the funny movie. She needed to breathe. Turns out she had been sitting there all this time, catching her breath. Having come to her senses, Adriana continued watching. The woman clearly heard the morning conversation with her husband. The record kept every word. Christopher behaved like a real actor. Now Adriana marveled at the surprised look on her husband's face. What a talent to waste. He should be on stage. The woman waited for the main moment. Will there be a nasty laugh, or is it a figment of her sick imagination? Yes, and Adriana heard the laughter that had recently become her nightmare. The camera recorded everything, and how Christopher discreetly turned on the tape recorder in his pocket, and how he was surprised when Adriana asked him if he could hear the sounds. The woman turned off the video. There was nothing else of interest there anyway. She leaned back in her chair and exhaled in relief. Yes, Christopher had turned out to be a bastard, but more importantly, she didn't have to fear for her mental health. That couldn't have been more gratifying. However, new questions immediately came to mind. What to do now? What to expect from Christopher? Why did he have to present her as a freak? Why not just leave her for a new lover? Since he cared for her so much, unable to fight her emotions on her own, Adriana dialed her sister's number. She immediately took a cab, and in half an hour, she was at Adriana and Christopher's apartment. Wow. Wendy stretched after watching the tape. Well, now everything is clear. Keep the cameras on, so we have more evidence. Okay, but what's the next step? And then go to court, of course. He and his mistress are committing a crime for which they should be punished. That's all. Well, I don't know. And Adriana shook her head doubtfully. I just want to get away from him. Where to? Wendy asked. To her parents' studio apartment, where her father and mother had recently moved her elderly grandmother from the village? No. You and Lisa, both of you, have the right to live in much better conditions, by law, by the way. As a lawyer you can't help, but know that. This is so unpleasant. And it'll be even worse when your hubby realizes you're aware of his actions. Get ready. This probably won't end in a day. Too bad you don't have any strong allies. I wish I could help you. What can I? Just moral support. I do have allies. Adriana suddenly had an epiphany. Christopher's parents. I don't know why, but they're always on my side. They're supportive. They give me gifts. They adore Lisa. It's really weird. Usually parents are always on the side of the kids. The in-laws probably know something about their son. You should talk to them. Call, set up an appointment, and make sure you show them the video. Maybe Christopher's parents will shed some light on this story, and we will understand why he behaved this way, and not just demand that you divorce as a normal person would do in his place. And Adriana immediately called Christina and asked her to come over. She agreed without question. Wendy, Adriana asked her to stay. I felt more comfortable with my sister. Of course I'll stay. There's no way I'm leaving you in this situation. Christina, as usual, showed up with gifts for Adriana and Lisa. She also brought a beautiful cake from an expensive pastry shop. You girls look so much alike. The woman splashed her hands. I can't get used to it. When we were kids, we used it a lot. Wendy smiled, especially at school. Adriana, you look tired and worried, don't you? The mother-in-law remarked, giving her daughter-in-law a glance. Is something wrong? Is that why you called me? Yes, something's wrong. And to understand what's going on, I need your help. The woman turned on the morning video to her mother-in-law and then told the whole story in order. Christina listened silently, caught every word, did not interrupt. Only sometimes a heavy sigh escaped from her chest. So nothing is over. Sadly, summarized her mother-in-law when Adriana finished her story. I had hoped that it was over, that he had really gotten his act together and changed. Is there something I don't know? Adriana clarified. It turns out you are. Christopher, it's our fault that he's like this. My husband and I built the business, gave it our full attention. In the meantime, Christopher was on his own. He got involved with a bad company and stopped studying, and this is the result. Then we caught on, tried to fix it. Tutors, the best doctors, strict supervision. We thought we'd done it. He stopped using and didn't see those shady friends anymore, only I always suspected Christopher was faking it. Just chasing the bad thoughts away, convincing myself that everything was fine. Wow! Wendy sighed. And I would never have thought your son had such problems. He does, apparently. I guess life has taught him to be a master of pretense. We threatened to take away Christopher's money and inheritance if he went back to his old ways. Without his father, without his money and his connections, Christopher can't do anything. It's sad to admit, but it's true. So he tries his best, playing the role of a model family man and perfect son. But Christopher has gone too far this time. I still don't get it. Adriana shook her head. If he's such a party animal and a pro-lifer, then why did he marry me? Why would a man like that need marriage and all that responsibility? My bad, Christina confessed. I thought that if my son got married, he would settle down. I also hoped that having a child with him would work a miracle. It would give Christopher an incentive to be better, more reliable, more decent, and change his worldview, but obviously that didn't happen. And yet, Wendy pitched forward, so gripped was she by the whole story. And yet why such an elaborate scheme? Well, he'd had enough of his wife and child. Wouldn't it be easier to just get a divorce and go back to his partying? I've got it all figured out, suddenly Adriana said. Christina and Benjamin set a strict condition for their son, either a normal family life or they deprive him of financial assistance. Am I right? You're right. The mother-in-law confirmed, lowering her eyes. Only now I realize it was our mistake. We put a lot of pressure on our son, out of good intentions, of course, but everyone suffered as a result. Christopher knew that all our assets were in Lisa's name. And we also threatened that if he hurt you, we would sign over a lot of things to you and leave him with nothing. That's it. The puzzle is complete. Wendy clapped her hands together. Now it makes sense. So Christopher wanted to make Adriana look crazy so that he could become the sole guardian of your daughter, the heir to your entire fortune, and in doing so, appeared to you as a victim of circumstance. His wife went crazy, poor guy, and now he's a single father suffering for the loss of his beloved. What about Adriana? She'd be institutionalized, deprived of contact with her daughter, and no one would trust a word she said. How awful! Yes, the plan is monstrous. Christina agreed, and especially hard to realize that its initiator, my son. There is also his mistress. Adriana reminded me glumly. My intuition tells me that she is the main manipulator, and Christopher, there are a lot of good things about him, and your plan partially worked. He works very hard, he stays late a lot, he travels a lot, he has a lot of good in him. Christina and Wendy looked at Adriana with a look of pity on their faces. Didn't you understand anything? The sister was surprised. How naive you are. Christopher and his mistress had it easy with you. There were no business trips. Christina shook her head. Christopher decides nothing at all in the company. Only James always takes care of everything. He goes on business trips if necessary. Christopher used to cover his job so that he could go out to bars and have fun with his friends and his mistress. But I still couldn't believe it. I thought there was a lot of good in Christopher. Adriana clung to her last hope of proving that her marriage wasn't all lies and illusion. Yeah, it doesn't matter. The mother-in-law waved her hand. Now let's decide what to do next. Christopher stood at the door of his parents' apartment. His mother had asked him to come over after work. Strange, of course, but interesting too. Maybe she wants to give him a special anniversary present. Something global, a new apartment, a car, a large sum of money. She thinks he's the perfect son now. He's working hard, raising a daughter. What's not to like? Oh, you look great. Christopher complimented his mother when she opened the door. Light makeup, well-groomed hair, stylish pantsuit. Mom, are we having company? Yes, nodded Christina, letting her son into the house. Come into the living room. Adriana? Wendy? Surprised, Christopher entered the room. You're a father. Why are you here? You're supposed to be in a meeting, aren't you? There are more important things than work, replied Benjamin. It's a pity I realized it too late. Christopher began to suspect something. Everyone was looking at him strangely, as if they knew about his and Emily's plan. But it's impossible, simply impossible. What is the occasion for which we are gathered here? Christopher tried to seem calm and natural. He sat down at the table, opened a bottle of soda, filled a glass. My anniversary is like only a week away. We all know, Christopher. Adriana couldn't take it anymore. You deliberately drove me crazy. Planned and methodical. And we have proof. What? The man couldn't believe his ears. Mom, Dad, what is she saying? Christopher, I saw it with my own eyes. I always knew you were a scoundrel, but I didn't expect this. Benjamin entered the conversation. Did you put the cameras? Christopher asked angrily, glancing at Adriana. What a clever, and pretended to be a simple girl. But you are far away from her. Wendy stood up for her sister. It's all your fault, shouted Christopher, looking at his parents. Christina shrank from his words, and Benjamin calmly looked into his son's eyes. You left me alone when I needed your support so much. You were only interested in business, and then you realized you started to control me, you completely deprived me of my freedom, and you still pressurize me. We won't do it again, son. Benjamin said quietly. We won't push you anymore. You're right. Now you are completely free, and you will make your own way in this life. You'll start earning your own bread. It's about time you did. What do you mean? Christopher asked anxiously, looking at his father. A small studio apartment and an SUV, so be it, keep it, but do not count on the rest for more. From now on, you're not on your own, flying free. And you don't work at my construction firm anymore. James is in charge there. I don't need employees like you. Try your luck elsewhere. All our assets are in Lisa's name, you know that. Christina continued. Your family apartment belongs to Adriana now. She has to raise her daughter somewhere. So we've already packed your stuff. You just need to hire a cab to move it all to your small apartment on the outskirts of the city. By the way, it's our anniversary present to you. Remember when we bought it a year ago? It's a generous gift. I don't think everyone gets such a head start in life. Use it wisely. You have no right. Christopher went into some kind of weird squeal. Wrong. My mother shook her head. It wasn't easy for her to say such things to her son, but she understood. You can't do otherwise. You can thank your parents for not having a case on you. Wendy added, I wanted to report you to the police, but they talked me out of it, said they'd deal with you themselves. Congratulations, son, said Benjamin. From this day on, you're free to fly. It's what you've dreamed of. Now you don't have to hide, live with your mistress, go to bars, have fun with your friends. You don't have to pretend anymore. Christopher walked out of McDonald's on a gray November evening. After the warmth of the room, it was unpleasant to be outside again. The wind was blowing, and a prickly snow flurry was falling from the sky. The man pulled the hood of his uniform cloak deeper over his head and adjusted the straps of the box behind his back. It's Friday, there's a lot of orders, but they'll pay well. He could buy more expensive booze and a decent appetizer and spend a nice evening in front of the TV. After his father fired Christopher from the company, things went badly for the boy. Money on the accounts quickly ran out. To stay afloat, had to sell the SUV. Good thing he didn't have to think about a place to live. His parents had generously left him one of their apartments, the smallest, but still. Emily couldn't stand that kind of life. She liked entertainment, adventure, fun, parties. Christopher had no more money for any of that. Of course, a beautiful and confident woman quickly found a replacement suitor for the loser. It hurt. It really hurt. After all, Christopher was willing to do anything for her. The man truly loved Emily. She was the reason he was in this situation. And her? So she was only attracted to his money after all. How could he not have realized that before? Now Christopher had to return to a long-forgotten profession. Where else could he go? Education is excellent. Work experience, indicated in the labor book, also impressive. But recruiters, from the very first minutes of the interview, realized that before them absolutely incompetent employee, and time after time refused him. So now Christopher rode around the city on a bicycle, with a huge box over his shoulders. He pulled his hood up, not enough for his former colleagues or acquaintances to see him. One day he was delivering pizza for a holiday party at a children's center. He was surprised to find his daughter among the children. Lisa looked like a princess in a lush pink dress and with an elegant crown on her head. Christopher involuntarily admired the little girl, even smiled. And suddenly the man slammed his palm on his forehead. How could he forget that today was his daughter's birthday? And he even felt a little ashamed. And then Christopher noticed Adriana. Beautiful, slim, spectacular, and very happy. She was lightly hugged around the waist by a young man. Already got herself a suitor? That was fast. It's only been 8 months since the breakup. Lisa must think of this man as her father. Christopher hurriedly slipped the pizza to the receptionist and hurriedly left the center before his ex-wife noticed him. The man pedaled with difficulty, the wheels of his bicycle sticking in the mud and snow. He still had a lot of work to do, and time was running out.
Subscribe and click the bell.
It was a month before her husband's birthday. Maria realized that her mother-in-law was planning a big celebration, but she didn't want to be a part of it. Robert, Maria's husband, was the owner and director of the local mill. In one person in a small provincial town, it all already looked like big business. The mill was in demand by the local people. Many people tried to keep livestock and poultry, which were then taken away from them by suppliers. Maria had been living with her husband for 10 years, but in recent years she had increasingly begun to question her choice. Once a young girl from the village, she wanted to marry a city dweller in the hope of leaving her godforsaken village. But the years went by, and Maria began to realize that family life with Robert, she had not succeeded. And it was not that she and her husband still had no children, but the man was never distinguished by a special devotion. After a year, Maria realized her husband was having an affair. So what? Thought the 25-year-old then. He married me anyway, and he comes home to me. But years passed, and Maria realized that her attitude to family life was fundamentally flawed. Maybe that's why we don't have children, Maria sighed. If he loved and appreciated me, he would not have any women on the side. What kind of life is that? My husband almost every day comes home from work, and with packs of lipstick, or from him women's perfume smells. Maria, in the last 3 years, began to think about what would happen if she and her husband divorced. It was a question that kept her on her toes. Maybe I'd meet someone who would love me, she thought, and what I have can really be called a marriage. Everything in our family is defective, starting with a phrase like you, and ending with the desire to cook dinner for her husband. Maria closed her eyes before her. Fragments from her childhood flashed through her mind. Her father, who drank a few drinks at dinner every night. Maria's mother, who worked for the participants and came home from work with no energy. Her legs were beginning to fail. The woman saw 3 cows, in whose yard her mother used to give milk before work and pouring it into jars, which the neighbor took away and took to the city to sell. And that, of course, was not life, sighed the woman. And anyway, why did we need so much? She thought. After all, it was possible for mother and father to leave their participant and to deal with cattle and poultry at home. They all hoped that they would retire and be given a lot of money. In fact, it turned out that despite the long service, both the father and the mother were given the minimum wage. How many daughter ran with them to all kinds of instances? But they couldn't do anything. In the end, Greg, Maria's older brother, who stayed in the village, looked after the parents. For the first few years, Maria came often. But 3 years ago, she went out to work, so now she didn't have as much free time. I'd better go to work, Maria said to herself then. I'm fed up with my mother-in-law and her reproaches. Soon she will start counting every piece of bread I put in my mouth. Maria looked at her watch, but there were 20 minutes left till the end of the break. She got a job as a cashier at a public utility. The pay, of course, was small. But Maria felt independent from her husband. The only friend, and she had Lucy, with whom the girl met by chance. Maria then had just arrived in the city. She had no housing. She found an ad in the newspaper that a room was rented. The landlady was a very nice woman named Lucy. She was 15 years older than Maria. But after Maria's marriage, the women continued to be friends. Hi, Maria. The friend was happy. I haven't heard from you for a long time. How are you doing? Hi, Lucy. Maria replied cheerfully. It's nothing new. I'm just preparing myself for my next challenge. Robert's birthday is in a month, so his mother's having a birthday party. At least we'll have fun, Maria. You've got to take it easy. Lucy, to tell you the truth, I'm sick of him and his mom. You were swearing, Maria. I don't even know why I live with him. He doesn't love me. I don't love him either. He's got tons of women on the side. And I've been telling you for a long time to leave him, and don't even think about it. Seriously, answered Lucy. Men like him never settle down. You know, I do not understand why he needs me. Gardens in the voice at Maria. Already would have filed for divorce, and each of us would have long lived their own lives. How many times we argued with him about it, and he still does not. And a week later he comes again, all in lipstick. What kind of life is that? You know, such men keep good wives as an excuse to clear their conscience, replied her friend. Here they say, look, she lives with me. After all, everyone knows that Maria is a good model wife, so I am good. So I do everything right. You see, you're like a protective shield for him. A good woman can't live with a bad man. That's why he needs you. I don't know. There's a lump in my throat. I'm so sick of all this. Why am I so weak? Free. As soon as I'm about to file for divorce, something inside me stops me. You just look at the results, Lucy said. What have you accomplished in 10 years? Nothing. As the great Einstein said, if you do the same thing for years and expect a different result, you're crazy. And he's right. Maria answered quickly, this is just kind of crazy. And I want it to stop. When Maria started renting a room from Lucy, Lucy was going through a very difficult time in her life. Lucy was recently divorced and had been just coming to terms for a few years. Lucy's first husband was a man of glory and arrogance. He devalued his wife for years and made her bow down to him. When Lucy found herself in a deep depression, it began to dawn on her who was the real reason for her unwillingness to live. Her husband so suppressed her will that Lucy even considered suicide. And only by making incredible efforts, Lucy was able to break free from the net of her first husband and freed herself from the psychological rapist in her life. 2 years after Maria got married, Lucy met her soulmate. Kolya, too, turned out to be a man with a difficult fate. But in a few years together, they overcame their deepest wounds and began to live, as they say, soul to soul. The friends saw from the outside what was happening to Maria, but she also realized that Maria had to see it all for herself. Lucy, I really understand that it is necessary to give it all up, Maria finally said. After his anniversary, I'm going to file for divorce. I don't care if he wants it or not, but I won't cover his dirty ass anymore. Let everyone know what a womanizer he is. I'm done. After talking to her friend, Maria felt a strong inner impulse. She saw very clearly that she needed to end her relationship with Robert. So I need to do the math, Maria thought as she returned to the cash register after lunch. For 3 months, I'll try to raise money for the first time. I have enough, and then what God will give. The working day went on in a measured manner. This day there were few visitors, and the cashier was always in her dreams. Maria's eyes were always on some children. She heard their ringing voices, felt the warmth spilling over her whole body. She thought to herself she would like to hold Butuzov in her hands. God, why I don't have everything like people? But a visitor came and the cashier was distracted from her thoughts. The man paid the utility bill, thanked me, and left. Finally, the working day came to an end. It was 4:50. Maria slowly began to pack her things. The woman didn't have a car. Yeah, she never really wanted one. Her husband never came home that early. So Maria took public transportation all the time. So the half is about to be a 1. Maria looked at her watch. In about 50 minutes, I'll be home. She boarded a full bus. Many people were returning home after work. Maria stared out the window. As the bus drove along, hitting a pothole or a bump, the city hadn't allocated money for road work for a long time. Therefore, there had not been much outrage from the passengers for a long time. I still had some chicken breast and some vegetables left, reflected on the way Maria, probably all together and in the heat. And as a side dish, I'll make pasta. Maybe I'll buy something else for tea on the way, she thought, although Robert had brought a box of chocolates and a cake the other day. His mistress must have run away from him that night. Oh my God! He wasn't ashamed to bring it home. Let him eat it himself. I'll buy myself some chocolate chip cookies. Maria got off one stop early to go to the store. She was curious about what she should get. Take this brownie. The salesperson offered her one. It's delicious. It's got everything from buttercream to nuts to chocolate. All right, give me half a kilo. I'll try it. Maria agreed. And you can also have a large leaf green tea. Well, I'll make myself a festive dinner tonight. Maria was glad, going home. It was still unknown when today Robert would come after this incident with a ruined date. He was angry all night last night. He must have been dumped by another mistress. Maria changed her clothes and got busy preparing dinner. Despite the fact that Robert was making good money, it couldn't be said that he was shocking. At least for the house, they always bought everything cheapest. Maria felt that her husband did not save them for his mistresses. Even judging by the candy he brought, they weren't cheap, but for his wife, the most ordinary caramel would have been fine. Sometimes it got ridiculous. One weekend, Maria asked her husband to buy fruit. Robert went to the market. He was gone most of the day. He finally came back in the evening. What's this? Shocked. Took out a bag. Robert, they're all ruined. But at half price, my husband was quick to respond. You wanted to make housing out of them anyway. These will do just fine. Are you out of your mind? Maria got angry. Maybe I should cook out of slop now. Robert, don't you have any money? Yes, he answered briefly, but you have to live wisely. If you can save money, why not? And that wasn't the only time. But even then, in Maria's heart, there was a dream to get rid of her husband forever. Over the years, Robert only got worse. Naturally, this contributed to this, and his mother, Lily, was a woman willful. She brought up her children herself and thought that now everyone should be obliged to her for that. And this applied not only to her children, but also to all the other people who surrounded her. Only her younger brother Eugene never played by her rules. In fact, Robert's mother deliberately withheld that her younger brother at one time helped her very well. In fact, he bought his sister a house, and he himself at that time had nothing behind his soul. One day, Eugene couldn't stand it and told his sister everything. After that, they did not speak for many years. Robert's mother considered him the first enemy of her son and daughter. She always turned Don against him. In general, you could say, has nothing to do with our family. She used to swear. His mother gave birth late, when my father was 20 years old. Who was his father? Nobody knew. She disgraced our whole noble family with that bastard. She was just over 10 years apart from her brother. So when Lucy Lamb's husband died tragically, she was 28 and left with nothing and 2 children in her arms. Eugene took a job in construction that year. He worked for 3 years and gave almost all the money to his sister, which she collected and with which she eventually bought a house. But Robert's mother never talked about it. She had once mentioned that Eugene had a girl he loved at the construction site. She fell from the 7th floor and died. Maria finally prepared dinner and sat down with anticipation at the table. To her surprise, she found that she had no particular appetite. So much time and effort spent on all this eating. I don't want to, Maria sighed and put down the spoon. But I will definitely drink tea, she said to herself, looking at the beautiful cake in the plate. Maria finished her dinner, putting everything away. She knew that it was unlikely that her husband would come home early. Maria took the phone and called her mother. Manya, how are you? Her daughter asked excitedly. How are your legs? Are you feeling better after the medicine? You know, Maria, sometimes it's nothing, and sometimes it just can't walk, sighed the mother. I don't want to keep cattle or poultry. Mom, it's high time you gave it all up. Maria supported her. That you do not have enough money to live? My grandfather and I don't need much, said Wendy. We all want to help you with Greg. Yes, my brother has enough livestock of his own. Maria said angrily. He should start a farm. Maria, but I feel for you. Through tears, said her mother. For your sake, we are walking on the ground. What's the matter? Are we small or what, Mom? The daughter scolded her mother. We've been living our own lives for a long time. Yes, at least Greg has a family and children. What about you? That hurt Wendy's feelings. Maria, how's that? No kids? Mom, but don't start. Maria got angry. But if it doesn't work out, what can I do? I'm doing fine. Robert says he's fine too. Maria, you can, and that's why you have no children, because he is always on mistresses and his mother was worried about him. That's the kind of dog he is. You're right about that, said Maria. Mom, I want to divorce him. I'll file for divorce in a couple of months. It's his anniversary in a month, so my mother-in-law is preparing a party for the city. By the way, are you and Greg coming? I'm sure we're not. I don't think my son is either. They're always busy at home. How can you leave a farm like that? My grandfather and I can't pull it off on our own. Maria, give up this town and come home. After the divorce, where will you go? You don't have a place of your own. And here the whole house is empty. Mom, I don't want to live in the country. You know that, replied her daughter. Of course, I will certainly come to help you, but not to live here. Well, at least after the divorce for a while to come back to your senses, asked Wendy. You're still young. Hurry up and settle things with Robert. Maria, you'll get married and have children. And with them, you see nothing, only emptiness. After the conversation with her mother, Maria was even more confirmed in her decision to divorce Robert. She realized that when she first met him, she wanted an affluent life more than love. But as she grew older, her selfish desires melted away like smoke. And Maria saw clearly that living for a comfortable and settled life without any interest in each other made no sense. She remembered the day when she met her future husband. The girl was working in a store. One day, a handsome young man walked in. He examined Maria from head to toe. The saleswoman blushed. Do you want something? Finally, she said, I can show you. Unfortunately, what I need is not for sale here, sighed the man. And what is it? Puzzled, asked Maria and began to look around at the goods in the store. Love, romantically said the stranger. It is impossible to buy such a thing. You can, of course, find a girl who will have such a gift, but only where to find her. Looked the visitor directly into the eyes of the girl, turned around and left. What did he want? Perplexed, thought Maria. What did he want? He likes people like him to get on his nerves. The saleswoman quickly forgot about the strange customer. But to her surprise, a few days later he appeared in their store again. Unfortunately, while you were away, love, so did not bring with a serious look, she pronounced. The man at the top of his voice, he laughed loudly. With joyful eyes looked at Maria. The girl became embarrassed and blushed. Do I like you? Said the young man Robert. He extended his hand to the girl. Maria, shyly, shook that hand she shook. You need something else tonight. Yes. Through laughter, he answered. I need a beautiful vase for my mom. Could you pick something out for me? She broke hers the other day and now she's in pain. My mom loves flowers, especially when they are in big vases. Well, take this one. I offered Maria a big vase that was on the floor. It is not only beautiful, but also very spacious. You are probably right. I will take it. The man was pleased. I'll help you pack it. Why did Robert choose her? Maria had never known the man. He was prominent. He could easily have chosen a more suitable mate. But then the girl really believed he was in love with her. 2 months later, Robert had already introduced Maria to his mother. The latter looked at the girl with undisguised disdain. So your parents raise pigs. She looked reproachfully at Maria. Anna, what's indicative of that? No, the girl corrected her. We only have cows and chickens. We don't do pigs. And for me, there is no difference, grudgingly replied Lily. But why else could not understand the behavior of Robert's mother? Maria? They are completely different animals. She smiled. The woman looked at her with contempt. She wanted to say something, but her son intervened. Mom, Maria and I want to get married this summer. He said, Can we get married in a cafe? Isn't it a little early for a wedding? Are you thinking about it? Mother replied dryly. You don't even know her. And judging by the fact that Maria has no education, it's hard to say what she will make of her in the future. And Robert has an education. Maria asked, surprised. As far as I know, he dropped out of the institute and didn't finish it. But at least he studied there for 3 years. Lily looked at her unhappily. It was enough for him to run his own mill. and your 11 grades are only enough to clean the house. After the first meeting with Robert's mother, Maria felt spat upon. The girl at first wanted to prove that she too was capable of something in life. But after a couple of months, rumors reached her. How did Robert get the mill? Was it true or not? But Maria was told that Lily had once been the mistress of the town administrator. For many years, he had paid her for her services, so to speak. Robert's mother derived a very good income from this liaison. First, she got her son into an institute. Then her daughter graduated from technical school and got married. For the wedding, Lily gave her an apartment in the city. And then, out of nowhere, Robert got a mill. "Robert, where did you get all that money?" People used to ask him. "You never worked anywhere for so many years on your mother's neck." "As if you didn't work," he answered. "I'm not going to go around telling you everything, so it's all earned with sweat and hard work." Once the mill was up and running, even though it was in great demand, Robert used that to his advantage and jacked up the prices right away. Robert had people telling him, "You can't do that. If there was something else in town, we go there. And you take advantage of the fact that you're the only one. And you raise your prices like hell." But the mill owner only smiled back. He wasn't going to lower the price for his services. And neither were the common laborers, who gambled on the mills. He didn't pay much for the sacks. It was about 10 o'clock when Maria heard a click in the lock. Her husband showed up on the doorstep. He was glowing with happiness. He smelled strongly of women's perfume. "Robert, have you no conscience at all?" The wife couldn't bear it. "You think I'm going to put up with your partying forever? I'm going to file for divorce." "Maria, well, what are you on again?" The husband protested. "Don't spoil my mood. You're not going anywhere from me." "We'll see about that," shouted Maria and went to her room. "Can you prepare the papers?" she shouted from there. "What a fool," Robert replied. "Do you think I'll give you anything after the divorce? You've gone to hell. I'm gonna divorce you myself, just as soon as I finish my business with Vanessa." Maria didn't sleep very well at night. She was always angry with her husband and herself. She realized that her patience was coming to an end, and she would not be able to live like this for a long time. In the morning, she woke up early. Her husband was still asleep. Maria quickly dressed and went outside. "I don't even want to talk to him anymore," she whispered, "so that my eyes don't see him." Maria wandered silently through the morning streets. There was a slight fog. September was just beginning, so the remnants of summer were still in the air. It was Friday, and for Maria, it was the last day of work. The weekend was ahead of her. "I'll go to my parents' house," she told herself, and talk to them. "Maybe I'll get some ideas about what to do after the divorce." Maria sat down tiredly on a bench, closed her eyes, and put her face in the morning sun. Some children appeared in front of her eyes again. They were laughing loudly, throwing a ball. "How funny they are," Maria sighed and came to her senses. "I guess I want kids so much inside that it's become my drive. Mom's right, I'm 35 now. Why should I waste my time with this Robert? And there's no love between us." Maria got up from the bench and wandered towards the bus stop. She realized that she would arrive at work too early, but decided it was better to be there than to stay at home. The day flew by very quickly, and Maria was getting home tired. She suddenly picked up the phone and called her husband. "Robert, I'm going home today. I'll be back on Sunday," she said dryly. Well, without hiding her joy, her husband answered. "When will you be back?" "Call. He's probably afraid that I'll catch him at home with his mistress." Maria thought to herself and hung up the phone. Robert was very happy that his wife had gone away for a few days and would not be home. His new acquaintance, Vanessa, was driving the man crazy. He'd fallen in love like a boy before his 40th birthday, so I'm going to call Vanessa now so she'll be waiting for me. He picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. "Hello, my favorite," heard a flirtatious voice in the receiver. "Of course I'm waiting for you. I'm just about to cook us a romantic dinner." Vanessa was 22, and she tried with all her might to get a money man. She had come to the city with a very specific purpose, and she did not want to waste her time. Vanessa immediately set herself a target. She had several wealthy men in mind. The girl was not daunted. The fact that they were married. The main thing to catch them in their nets. And then, if she succeeded, She could divorce one of them and marry him. That's good. And if not, I'm not the least bit embarrassed about being a wealthy mistress. Robert was the first to fall for Vanessa. Everything was going well between them, so the girl decided to stop with him for the time being. The main thing that he constantly gave me money, thought Vanessa sets the table. Today about his wife, I will forgive the children, as he told me, they have no children. So there will be no problems in the divorce. Finally, the bell rang, and the hostess opened the door. She flung herself at the man's neck. "Robert, I missed you so much through tears," said the girl. "You know I probably can't go on without you. I can't even get through a day without you. What are you, my love?" Robert kissed her. "I love you very much too. How are we going to live from now on?" She looked at him with innocent eyes. "You're married, aren't you?" "You have a family." "But I am married, yes," answered the man. "But unfortunately, I don't have a family. Maria, and I didn't work out. And what are you going to do now?" The girl asked with interest. "After so many years of life, you will file for divorce?" "Exactly." Robert hugged his new girlfriend. "I do not see any obstacles to our divorce. We have no children, we have nothing to share. Maria will leave my house with nothing. And if she sues," Vanessa thought, "she could win it and take something away from you." "Well, that's unlikely." Her lover reassured her. "Maria's only been working for the last 3 years, and before that she lived entirely off me. So any division of property is out of the question. The family was and is fed only by me. She spends her pennies on pocket change." "Well, that's good." The girl exhaled. "I love you so much that I don't even know how I can live up to your divorce." She burst into tears. "Vanessa, but everything will be all right." Robert hugged her. "You'll just have to wait a couple months." Vanessa and her lover spent an unforgettable evening. The man for the weekend decided to stay at her place, but on Saturday he still had to go to work. Robert here was told that by the man from the mill on the phone. They won't pay for the flour here. They say there's another mill in town, and they're charging a lot less. They want you to give it to them at the same price. What's this nonsense? The owner was cursing. Who could open a mill there? He was surprised. "All right, I'll be there soon." Robert, dissatisfied, drove to work. There were already several people gathered outside the mill. None of the customers wanted to pay the price he had set anymore. "What kind of lawlessness are you doing here?" The mill owner shouted unhappily. "Either pay what I said, or get the hell out of here. I won't give you the goods." "On what grounds?" The man with the mustache answered him. "I brought you my wheat, what are you doing here? You're the one who's pushing the sacks around here. You'll never lift a finger. With all your men working for nothing. You want to keep my flour for a fair price. Let that sin be on you, but remember, no one will ever come to you again. At the new mill, the prices are almost half what you're paying. And the owner is a good man." The man turned around and left. The others argued some more and left too. Robert Evil looked at his men and scattered the sacks in anger. Finally, he calmed down a little and approached one worker. "Where is this bloody mill located?" he asked. "What kind of asshole gets in my way? I'll show him." "Yeah, I don't know," the young guy shrugged. "They say somewhere on Novorossiyskaya, but I'll deal with them now." Quickly, the owner jumped into his car. "I'll show them who's boss." It took Robert an hour to find the new mill. He jumped out of the car and sped through the gate. "What are you doing here?" Shocked, asked the man. "Do you work here?" Imagine that, someone answered him. "Why are you here?" "I don't need your orders." "So you're the one who started the new mill?" Robert shouted in anger. "You bastard." "Why is that?" A man in his 50s answered him. "I don't call you a bastard for living in a house bought at my expense for most of your life. How dare you?" The guest raised his hand at him. "I'll take you right here by the soul. But come on, try it." The owner of the new mill grabbed his hand, so hard that he cried out in pain. "Let go, you idiot. You'll break my arm." Robert tried to get away. "I hate you so much. You're just the same as you were, you're just the same as you are now. Why did your grandmother give birth to you?" "It's not up to you to decide who lives and who doesn't," his uncle said. "So go on, get out of here. I'm not meddling in your business. You're a bastard who's trying to price me out." The nephew was angry. If you don't calm down, you'll see what I'll do to you. I'm the boss here. That's why I set the price I want. Eugen answered. And the fact that you have no conscience and you steal from people, it's got nothing to do with me. I'm your bastard, Robert Hittest. And your mill to hell's bedroom you'll see, and I'll get nothing for it. The man started his car and drove at full speed to his mother's house. She was cooking in the kitchen and wasn't expecting her son. Robert's son, what's wrong? Concerned. His mother asked him, You don't have a face on you. Did your wife drive you crazy? What's my wife got to do with it? He said in anger. It's your brother. God, why isn't he dead yet? Eugen said in amazement to her mother, What does he have to do with it? What has he done to you? He opened his own mill and set low prices there. That's why no one wants to come to me with anger now, replied the son. What a bastard, underhanded broad, Lily said. Well, I'll show him. You'll show him what? Robert said with annoyance in his voice. After the death of your administrator, we have no such connections in the city. Let's hire some guys to show him. The woman's eyes lit up with rage. In fact, let them kill him. How much do I hate him? It won't work. Strictly looked at her son. Suspicion will fall on us, and I'm not going to jail for that idiot. Then what are we going to do? Lily was worried. He's not going to close his mill now, is he? That's why we're going to start a fire, Robert smiled. It's an old building, so it could easily happen there. You want to burn down his mill? The mother looked at her son in astonishment. Robert, I won't let you do such a thing. But I won't do anything myself, he said, rubbing his hands together. I have a man in mind. He will organize it all. It is necessary to do everything carefully, so that we are not suspected. Well, all right, agreed the mother. Just be very careful, or it's true. We'll go to jail for such an idiot. He's not worth it. Robert Lucky went back to his mistress. Images kept flashing in his mind of the new mill going up in flames. The man parked his car and ran into the entryway. Vanessa was already waiting for him. Robert, darling, what happened to your care? She asked the man. You left so abruptly that I didn't even know what to think about. Yes, I had some urgent business to attend to, Robert replied. But now I am completely free for you. He kissed the girl. That kind of thing. Vanessa didn't stop. Something serious. Can you get hurt? Not anymore, he smiled. Some bastard crossed my path, so I put him in his place. Sweetheart, were you threatened? I wanted to get the information I needed. Vanessa, they're bandits. No, Robert laughed. It's just that there's a new mill in town, and he's charging a very low price for the service. That's why all my customers went to him. But it's all right now, don't worry. One of these days, that new mill's just gonna burn down. You lost all your customers. Vanessa interrogated him with annoyance. What's to be done now? You have no income. Yes, I will solve this issue one of these days. Robert calmed his beloved. So don't worry. The girl really didn't like what had happened. She realized that Robert was not as reliable a lover as she would have liked. He could lose everything in an instant. Okay, I'll wait, Vanessa said to herself. If things don't work out with him, I'll dump him right away. Why do I need him without money? I don't need a guy like that. You meet a lot of them on the street. Robert stayed with Vanessa all night. The man decided that when his wife called him, he'd go home. So he decided to forget about all his troubles and indulge in bodily pleasure with his beloved. Vanessa, how I love you, he whispered to his mistress. I will dawn soon, and we will definitely be together. The girl looked into his eyes, but in her mind she had other plans unfolding. Robert, I got on the bus. His wife called him. I'll be home in 2.5 hours. Maria really didn't want to go home. It wasn't that she dreamed of staying in the village, but her dislike for her husband was growing so strong by the day that she didn't even want to see him. Maria, if it has come to the point of disgust, then you should give it all up already, the father told his daughter. It won't do any good. You know how many times your mother and I didn't fight, how many times we were angry with each other. But it was anger. There was never any hatred between us. That's true, Wendy confirmed. I always divorced your father in language, and then when we calmed down, I realized I didn't want to live without him. I never wanted anyone else. I realize that I have driven myself into my own trap, sighed my daughter. I wanted an easy life, but as it turned out, everything has to pay for it. An easy life is just an illusion. It never is. It just seems that if you have a wealthy husband, there will be no problems in your life. But I've been paying for my Robert's security all these years. I put up with all his mistresses, his greed, which has started to show, especially in the last few years. I've spent so many years trying to ignore his mother's insults. What's the point of all this? I'm not swimming in butter. I basically have nothing behind me. All my suffering isn't worth it. So when you get here, file for divorce right away. There's no point in dragging it out, summed up my father. You won't be on the street, and you won't be without a piece of bread. If you want, you can come and live with us. Know your mother, and I will help you as much as we can. Maria was on her way home, and she had a very strong desire to break up with Robert that very day. She did not want to wait any longer, neither until his anniversary nor after. I will come and tell him at once, Maria thought, whether he wants to or not. I don't care if it goes on any longer. It can't. Maria opened the door to Robert's apartment. The house was still empty. She sat down tiredly on the bed and began to estimate how many things she had to take with her. Furniture was out of the question, although she had bought the kitchen set entirely at her own expense. Let it stay with his new wife, she smiled. If only he would leave me alone. 2 hours later, Robert arrived. His wife called him into the kitchen. Husband puzzled. Robert looked at her. I think you realize that our family no longer makes sense. Maria said calmly. So it's better for us to divorce by mutual consent. Ted seriously delayed his husband to think over how he should act now. Robert, of course, was going to divorce his wife, but he planned to make sure that it was his initiative. The man was very afraid that Maria might vilify him, and his ego did not allow this in any way. I don't think such things can be solved so easily, he objected. They are resolved coldly, said the wife, especially when the husband has had mistresses throughout his married life. I have something to present to the court. Maria, yes, they were just romantic encounters. Robert protested. Did they prevent us from living together? I don't care what you call your mistresses. His wife answered him angrily. But I won't stand for it any longer. Tomorrow, I'll take the application to court. I have no claim to any of your property. About this, you cannot even worry, but she wants to divorce you before the anniversary. My mother was yelling into the phone. How dare she humiliate us like that? Ungrateful bastards. Robert, until your anniversary is over, a divorce is out of the question. Please ask her to wait. And at your birthday party, I'll give her a party. So she won't even want to stay in town for the embarrassment. Leave it to me. Robert realized that his mother had planned the grand celebration to promote him out of himself, so to speak. And now she could have everything fallen apart. The man approached his wife again. Maria, I beg you to hold off on the divorce until it has passed. My anniversary, the husband said dryly. You know what an embarrassment that would be for us, don't you? No, replied the wife briefly. Let me get what you deserve. Both you and your mother have lived at other people's expense all your lives. I will not wait. I'll take the papers. Tomorrow, Robert was desperate. First, he got in trouble because his uncle had started a new mill. Now he realized his wife was leaving. The man called his mother again. All right, I'll talk to her myself. The mother finally made up her mind. I'll talk her into it. You can be sure. A few minutes later, Maria's phone rang. She saw her mother-in-law's number. At first, Maria didn't want to pick up the phone, but she had so much anger against her that she wanted to say something to her. Maria heard her. You and Robert have the right to decide what you want to do. But I'm asking you to hold off on the divorce until after the anniversary. I've never asked you for anything. Just do my first and last request. And it was true. Lily was not the kind of person to ask, especially not from Maria. She was astonished and agreed to her mother-in-law's request. Thank you. Only just answered Robert's mother, and hanging up the phone, reveled in their victory for a long time. Well, I'll show you on anniversaries. You'll see at my place. What does it mean to deal with me? The next day, Maria was in no mood to go to work. She was so anxious to get it all over with. And now she had to wait almost 3 more weeks, Maria. but she didn't blame herself for that. Her friend told her, when she called her at lunchtime, that you would fulfill her request and let the rest be on their conscience. Lucy, I don't want to see him like that anymore. Through tears answered Maria. Now I do not understand how I could live with him. Every day he's wearing lipstick, and it's like being sprayed with that stinking perfume. Well, you don't care now. Lucy objected. What do you care now who he's giving his romantic dates to? She laughed. You're just mad at yourself and feel guilty about everything. You feel like it could have been avoided, but it really couldn't. If you hadn't been through all that, you wouldn't be seeing all this now. So it was a lesson you had to learn. Oh, Lucy, I wish I could look at life the same way, she sighed. I can't breathe because the pain inside is so tearing. I can't breathe. It's okay. All this will pass and much faster than you think. Maria encouraged the woman. After talking to Lucy, the friend felt lighter. In general, Lucy was often for her both a psychologist and a psychotherapist. On this day, the working day ended very quickly, and all because Maria really did not want to go home. She delayed leaving until the last minute, but it was already 6:30, and there was nothing more to do at work. I'll go to the park, Maria decided. It's still light outside. Maybe a walk would calm me down a little. I don't want to go home if only someone knew. But Maria's worries, on the one hand, were not justified. Robert was now spending all his nights with his mistress. His wife never saw him at home. Sometimes he called her if he had any questions. And Maria finally began to fall asleep at night, not afraid to hear her husband come home. Robert, on the other hand, was going through a period of problems, and the man was trying to get out of it all. He finally found a man who could do the arson for him. For almost a week, his mill had been out of business, with no one coming to crush grain for him. Robert was also hurt by the fact that Maria was the first to decide to leave him. It had left him with no peace. Even though he was with Vanessa now, he felt vulnerable all the time. No Maria had ever left him before, and that was with his mistresses. And here it was his wife who had taken the initiative. Earlier, when they had talked about divorce, Robert had realized that it was all nonsense. He was very easily manipulated by Maria, but now it was serious. She wants to leave me, sounded the arrogant voice in his head. Who the hell is she? Some Maria from some godforsaken village. You should thank me for the rest of your life for marrying you. You idiot. I'll take everything away from you. But then Robert remembered that Maria had no claim to any of his property, and that made him feel even more hurt. What's the matter with you? Vanessa hugged him. You're always so angry. You still haven't managed to solve the problem with the new mill. What's Robert come to? No, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just trying to work things out with my wife. What's the problem? She doesn't want to file for divorce. The girl asked curiously. Naturally, such a tidbit to lose. Arrogantly laughed the man. Yes, she is at my feet, asking me not to leave her. Why are you so wary? Vanessa, you're not divorcing her. She's holding her breath. Who needs her? Robert looked at her. I'm sick of that country bumpkin. You have no idea how tired I am of her. I even blocked her number. She's always calling me and crying, so I'll just stay with her. She comes to my work all the time. I got Robert crawling on his knees in front of me, but something has to be done about it. The mistress gave him a stern look, or she'll give us a hard time. She'll be sleeping under our doors. Don't worry, I'll put it all away soon. The man kissed her. Everyone should know their place. You're my queen. What is she? A pig farmer. She's lived among pigs all her life. No beauty in her, no nurture. Robert, I can't understand why you married her at all. Vanessa asked in amazement. Do you think I wanted to? The man laughed. Yes, she got me drunk and seduced me. And then she chased me for 2 months, blackmailed me that she was pregnant by me. Her father filed a police report for allegedly raping her. Do you know how much trouble they've caused me? Why do you think we don't have kids? Because I've never slept with her. I don't need her. All right, let's say you did. You married her, the girl reasoned. But why did she have to put up with it for 10 years? After a couple months, it was clear she wasn't pregnant. So he could have divorced her right away. But Vanessa, that Maria has made my life a living hell. Robert said pitifully. Do you know how many times Maria cut my veins? She blackmailed me. If I could have done it before, I would have divorced her a long time ago. But now it's gonna be okay. She kissed a man. Girl, trust me. You'll be happiest with me. Soon you'll divorce her, and we'll have a new life. Vanessa, I don't need anyone else but you. Robert hugged her. You're all I've got, and this Maria, she can go to hell. I don't even want to think about her. No one can keep us apart. Vanessa was very pleased with herself. It seemed to her that Robert was on the hook. She didn't even think that it would be so easy for her. The girl felt that the man was willing to do anything for her. Vanessa heavy herself with dreams that soon she would move out of the rented apartment to Robert, persuade him to sign his apartment over to her, and then her game would be over. The man wasn't as rich as she would have liked. Therefore, the girl was not going to spend her whole life on him. Maria waited for her husband's anniversary as a kind of verdict. She had a strong feeling that something would happen on it. She was cautiously waiting for the birthday, her spouse at work. Everything went on as usual. One day was followed by another. It was Thursday when Maria was on her way home from work. She took it slowly, not paying attention to the fact that it had started raining fall rain outside. Maria stopped outside her house. God, it's like a prison to me now. She looked at her driveway. One thing I'm glad Robert's not coming over tonight. But it still stopped saving me. How I wish I could call a cab, load up my stuff, and go wherever the hell I wanted to go. Maria walked into the entryway and reluctantly went up to the third floor. She opened the door to her apartment and hesitated. Maria was about to enter when suddenly she heard quick, heavy footsteps downstairs, and a strange man appeared in front of her. Robert lives here. He asked unhappily. I need him urgently. Go get him. Hello. Surprised was all the landlady could say. I'm probably going to upset you, but I don't think he'll be home right now. Who are you? The stranger looked at her angrily. Are you his wife or? Neither. Maria answered indifferently. We're going through a divorce, so I can't tell you anything about his whereabouts. He's probably with his next mistress. I'm sorry. The man has come to his senses. I can talk to you. This is a very serious matter. I've been surprised by Maria. If you want to ask me about Robert, I can't help you. I really don't know where he might be, she answered tiredly. Still, let me ask you a few questions. The stranger insisted. I am, unfortunately, Robert's uncle, and he is not at all embarrassed by our relationship. Are you, Eugene, in shock? Interrogated the landlady. Well, come in, but I really don't know how to help you. I believe your name is Maria, asked the woman. The man, when he came in. I wasn't at your wedding. In fact, I wasn't invited. I'll be honest with you. I have so much conflicting information about you that I don't even know what to believe, she sighed. Lily never had a good word to say about you. How long have I known her? She hated you all the time, but I don't quite understand why. Because she doesn't have a single reason, sighed the guest, and sat down in the chair offered to Maria. She's been arrogant all her life. I don't know how she got married with such a temper. Alex was under her heel for almost 8 years, and then one day he was found dead near the house. To this day, no one knows what happened to him. According to the doctor's conclusion, his heart had stopped Lily. All the juices had drained out of him. She did not let him die. He went to work and had some time off from her. She didn't work anywhere. In fact, you could say her sister married herself off to him. The guy didn't want to marry her. Wow. Maria looked at Eugene in amazement. You can't tell from her. She tells everyone what a difficult life she had, how she raised 2 children by herself. When Alex's husband died, I felt sorry for Robert, I sighed. I was only 18 years old at the time, so I immediately got a job on a construction site instead of Alex. I gave almost all the money I earned to my sister. It was later I found out that in those years she, it turns out, had a sponsor on the side. After her husband died, she quickly buried the director of the forestry, who also brought her money. That's why she hated me. I knew about all her lovers, and she couldn't do anything about it. My sister used the tactic, best defense, offense, and tried with all her might to smear me. Unfortunately, she also turned her children against me, although they both looked like her so selfish and inhumane grew up. So the fact that I have no relatives, I have not lost anything. And your mother? Careful. Maria, Eugene asked. Was she still alive then? No. With annoyance in his voice, he answered. Mom died shortly before Elk's husband died. Mom was a very nice person. It's not clear who she gave birth to such a monster. Maria sank into her thoughts while her guest drank tea. She realized that everything she had thought about her husband and his mother had not appeared to her. It was all really so, and to expect her to be happy with him was ridiculous. Maria, I didn't want to talk to you to discuss my sister. Eugene finally spoke up. Robert is such an idiot that in his blindness he even went to the crime. Did he kill someone? Shocked, said Maria. I always thought he was a coward. That's because he's a real coward. He wanted to commit arson, answered the guest. Do you understand? I happen to be lucky enough to open a mill on the other side of town. I myself know how people live here, so I set very democratic prices for my work. You need an influx of customers to keep people paying. I first expected to lower the price to the lowest level to attract people, and then I planned to raise the prices by 10%. After all, I need to pay people a salary. No one will work for me for free. So even those increased prices, I was going to set almost twice as low as Robert's mill. He found out there was another mill in town, and he came to me to make his case. They can make idle threats with their tongues. It runs in the family. And tonight my watchman caught one of them. He was going to set fire to my mill. Of course, nobody else wants to do it but Robert and his mother. They don't have much imagination. That's why they decided to get the competition out of the way, so to speak. I haven't filed a police report yet. I wanted to talk to him first, and if he doesn't come to his senses, I won't feel sorry for them anymore. I honestly don't know where he is. After finishing the story, the guests answered the hostess. Robert hasn't slept at home for a week. After I told him that I would file for divorce, his mother asked me to wait until his anniversary. She's going to throw a huge banquet. She is the one who can only self-promote, laughed Eugene. I'd advise you to be careful with them. They are rotten-hearted people. They don't recognize anyone but themselves. Unfortunately, I realized it too late, Maria sighed. Almost 10 years wasted. But nothing is for nothing. The man supported her. You know, at first I was very angry with myself that 3 years as a slave worked for Leica. But then I saw that in this situation I'm right, not her. And whatever she says about me, God knows the truth is on my side. And she'll get what she deserves in due time. All right, I'm sorry to pry into your soul with my problems. You need to sort yourself out. I'll keep an eye on Robert at his mill. It's just that I'm working as a handyman myself. I can't hire many people yet, so I have to work like everyone else. The man thanked Maria for the tea and left the apartment. She looked after him for a long time. Yes, for so many years there were legends about what a scoundrel and a cheat Eugene was. But in fact it turned out to be the opposite. She thought. So it's true about Lily's receptionist's lover too. Having lovers runs in the family. It must have been a rule their mother had instilled in their family. Maria smiled at her thoughts. Maria closed the door and sat down tiredly on the sofa. She had the feeling that she had been deceived for many years. And today she had finally learned the truth. Everything had come to a head. The divorce was already a done deal for her. Nothing else could turn Maria back. She would never have a normal life with Robert. To the woman's surprise, her husband came home that evening. He was looking for some documents. Maria didn't really want to get involved in his affairs, but something prompted her to start talking to him. Your uncle came today. She looked at her husband. He wanted to talk to you. What did he want? Robert asked dismissively. The bastard still came to my house. He caught some man in the night who wanted to set his mill on fire. Coldly pronounced his wife. So he, before he wrote a police report, wanted to talk to you. Robert turned pale. He had been told that everything that needed to be done last night had already been put under the mill, and that all that was left was to throw a match in the right place. How did you catch the shock? Asked the man. He had already been to the police. Terrified, he whispered. I don't think so, replied indifferently. He's got a wife. That's why he was looking for you. To talk to you. Robert stared at his wife. His eyes were running from side to side and sweat was beading on his face. He said nothing more to Maria and ran out of the apartment. What an idiot. The man swore as he got into the car. I'll show you now. He wants to write a police report on me. Robert drove the car toward his uncle's house. It was almost 10 o'clock. When he knocked on his front yard, "You bastard, why did you come to see my wife today?" he shouted loudly. "Did you want to rape her? Or have you two been having a love affair for a long time?" Eugene expected everything from his psychotic nephew, but not this. The man looked at him in shock. "I ask you, what is it with you and my little one? Why did you come to see her today?" "The neighbors told me everything." Robert's eyes burned with rage. "You bastard, you slept with my wife. Answer me." Eugene realized that a normal conversation with his nephew could not take place. "Tomorrow I will file a police report on you." He answered briefly. "I'm fed up with your madness. There will be an attempt to set fire to my mill and slander against me and your wife." Eugene went into the yard and closed the gate. Robert pounded on it for a long time, shouting something. Then he jumped into the car and drove home. He shouted from the doorstep, "It's fast, come here." Her husband ordered her. The wife was already asleep when she heard his inhuman scream. Shocked, she went out to him. Robert's hair was disheveled. There were convulsions running all over his body. "Maria, I found out everything," he finally said. "So that's the real reason for the divorce. You cheated on me with my own uncle. Robert, you're out of your mind." Maria stared at him in amazement. "Do you have any idea what you're talking about?" "I went to see him and he confessed everything to me, screaming like a madman her husband. How could you?" And he suddenly slapped her across the face. "What kind of bitch are you? Get out." Maria screamed at the top of her voice. "I'll call the police and an ambulance to take you to a mental institution. That's where you belong." Robert seemed to come to his senses a little. "He'd been staring at his wife since my birthday. I don't want you in my house," he said angrily. "I hate you so much. You slept with him for so many years. As soon as I threatened him, he confessed everything to me. What kind of a bitch are you?" Robert slammed the door and quickly ran downstairs. Maria stood there like a slob. She couldn't understand what had happened. Now, at last, she covered her face with her hands and cried. Could Eugene have said such a thing to him? Was her brain exploding? He seemed like an adequate man to me. God, what had I gotten myself into? Now this idiot will tell everyone that I cheated on him with his uncle. Maria spent the rest of the night in the kitchen drinking valerian. She couldn't come to her senses. Today, I'll go to the mill to Eugene and talk to him. She's made up her mind. Jesus, I don't know what's going on. Who's stupid and who's normal? The next day, Maria barely made it to work. She was pale and could barely stand on her feet. "Maria, go home." The boss let her go. "I can see that you are not feeling well." Maria wanted to go home first. Then she turned around and walked to the bus stop to get to the other side of town. It was about 10 o'clock when she finally found the new mill. Maria was feeling very tired. So when she entered the mill grounds, she almost fell down. "Are you sick?" Some man with a broom picked her up. "Let me put you on a chair." "Thank you." "I'm all right," the guest said quietly. "Could you please call Eugene your boss for me?" "Now wait," answered the guy, and, throwing the broom, ran to some tall building. In about 20 minutes, Eugene appeared on the street in his work clothes and covered in shot dust. "Maria," the man was surprised. "What's wrong?" "You just don't have a face, Eugene," she began, and, unable to stand it, burst into tears. "You told Robert yesterday that we were having an affair. He came to me at night, accused me of cheating, said that you confessed everything to him. What kind of nonsense is that?" The man was angry. "When will all this shit out of my life?" He couldn't take it anymore and swore. "By God, they're all sick in the head. They're all in the Neuve house. He came to see me late last night. Probably after you told him I had him." That asshole was screaming like crazy all over the street. First, that I wanted to rape you. Then that we've been lovers for years. I didn't say anything to him. All I said was I'd go and report him to the police today for attempted arson and slander. And that was it. God, he's really crazy. I could barely pronounce Maria. He threw all the blame on me. Now it turns out he's divorcing me because I cheated on him with you, not because he's had women on the side for 10 years, but because he made up a story about what a mean bitch I turned out to be. I told you they were a family of moral assholes. The man sighed. You should stay away from them. Well, God be with them. Maria, I'm sorry, but I'm starting to worry about you. I realize that you are quite a normal, adequate person. It's a hell of a lot easier to break someone's psyche with this. Wait for me here. I'll be back soon, asked the mill owner. Maria couldn't help it. Tears kept running down her cheeks. She was in so much pain. She couldn't understand then how one could lie and break another person's fate so easily. Phew, out of breath, Eugene came running. Let's go. You need to come to your senses because you're going to be so depressed you will need months to get out of it. Besides, I know the case, and it will be easier for you to discuss it with me. Maria obediently followed Eugene. She realized that it would be very difficult for her to understand and accept it all. But let's order some hot tea and something sweet to lift our spirits. And then, if you're hungry, we'll ask for something more serious. A man sat a woman at a table in a cafe. Maria looked around indifferently. She was in such a deep depression that she wanted to cry all the time. They brought hot tea, and the woman seemed to start to come to her senses. Maria, there's really nothing new in all this. Eugene looked at her. These are psychological traps for the mind. They are already 1,000 years old. First of all, always attacking first. What's in it for Robert and his mother? But we stay in complete shock for a while. So we become easily manipulated. That is, we become somewhat weak-willed. Now the big question is, where does this inner pain come from? I mean, why are we so hurt by their lies? Because we're always focused on other people's opinions and not our own. It's not that Robert is a complete fool that hurts you. It's that others will believe this slander. But I never did that, Maria said through her tears. I have not given him a single reason to doubt me in 10 years. Exactly. You have built up certain ideas about yourself. Eugene supported her. And in your opinion, you are worthy? Maria is a good wife. But does Robert's lie change anything? No. For you, the truth remains the truth. But now there are other people at play. That's the problem. You need to prove to others that it's a lie. And the more important question is, do we have to prove anything to anyone if we know the truth? No, those who are ready will accept the truth. And those who are not ready will never be able to accept it. No matter what you do. Do you understand? I think so, don't you? Maria's eyes shone. Because whatever Robert says I didn't do, that for some reason I start to act like it's true. I feel ashamed of something I didn't do. I'm afraid that other people will think badly of me. That is the biggest problem with lying. Eugene looked at her. It's not your fault. But for some reason you feel guilty for something you never did. Do you know how much I suffered when my favorite girl died on a construction site? It's one thing for people who work with you to spread gossip, but it's another thing for people closest to you to make it up, and it seems like there's nothing you can do about it. After all, everyone knows that you communicate with them. You trust them and tell them what you do not tell outsiders. And there is an illusion that relatives know not only more, but know all the most mysterious details of your life. That's why you need to trust their information. When Helen crashed, she made up the most unbelievable stories. I struggled with this for years. At first, in her version, I wanted to rape Helen before the wedding. But she didn't want intimacy with me. Then she had another version, that Helen was cheating on me, and I dropped it myself. I just did it so carefully that no one could prove it. I was in so much pain at the time from losing someone I loved. But my sister took advantage of that and tried to break me psychologically. If I had drunk or killed myself then, she would have felt the happiest because it would have proved her superiority, her power. It's the same with Robert. He doesn't care about you at all. All he cares about is that he's always on top. He can never be wrong. That's what my friend Lucy tells me. Maria replied, I understand what you're saying. I just can't put it into the right words. You know, almost all my life I've been fighting with them, trying to prove something to them, the man continued. But all the time I made the same mistake. I thought that these people could ever understand me. Maria, now I can say with absolute certainty that it will never happen. It's simply impossible. They're incapable. They live in their own imaginary world and will never let anyone and anything get them out of there. They will fight everyone to the last, just as long as they don't admit they're wrong. And then what do? Maria reasoned. We have to get on with our lives. There is only one way out, answered Eugene. Let them live their lives. You know how hard it was for me at first not to react to all this nonsense. But I made a great effort. At that time, the movie language became the sharpest knife. It cut me mercilessly. But after a few years, it realized that it no longer had that effect on me. My sister then began to make up even more incredible things. And since it seemed crazy from the outside, a lot of people started to turn away from her. And so a very promising lover left her for her delusions. How mad was she at me then? Of course, she soon had the receptionist on her hook. But still, when I stopped responding to them altogether, my business took off. I had a good income. I was able to buy a mill, which is a very promising business for our town. I wasn't going to compete with Robert. I didn't even know anything about his prices at all. A few days after I opened my business, people started coming to me and telling me how Robert was overcharging and bullying his workers. It all happened by itself. Maria listened attentively to her interlocutor, and her mind became clearer and clearer. It seemed to her that she and Eugene were in some ways alike. Only the man had already been through a lot, and she had not. She only had to face all the perfidy of Robert and his mother. After the meeting with Eugene, Maria began to pack her things. She rented a small apartment near her work and moved in. But Maria didn't have enough experience yet to see all the games of her husband and Lily. Maria, where are you? Her husband asked excitedly when he discovered in the evening that neither his wife nor her things were in the apartment. Robert, I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, she calmly replied. After what you arranged yesterday, I don't need your anniversary or your mother. Maria, but you promised. Her husband pressed her. How can I do business with you if you don't keep your word? Robert, that's enough, Maria said dryly. I will not play your games anymore. Do what you want. The man was very puzzled. First, he felt on top of the fact that he had come up with such a cunning plan with Maria. The cause of the divorce was now his wife, and he was left completely untarnished in the whole affair. But it all had to be shown in public on his birthday, and now Maria was out of his control. Robert picked up the phone and called his mother. Lily was absolutely thrilled with his plan. It couldn't have worked out any better. Son, she rejoiced, Maria was cheating on you with Eugene. It's such a great plan, and everyone's gonna know about it at the anniversary party. Mom, but there's just one problem, replied the son, with annoyance in his voice. Maria left me. She's going to file for divorce tomorrow. What should we do now? The mother was silent for a while. She realized that she could not avoid talking to Maria. A few minutes later, she was on the phone. Maria's daughter-in-law did not answer her call. Then Lily started calling her every 5 minutes. Finally, Maria couldn't take it anymore. Maria, Robert's mother sobbed at the top of her voice. How could it be? I thought you and my boy would make up soon. I want you to live with him so much. Who needs him but you? In fact, Robert's been crying all day today because you left him. I'm not going back to him, Maria said coldly, so don't waste your time. Maria, I really beg you, please don't leave us at the anniversary. Stammering with tears, said Lily. Please do what you want after Robert's birthday, but don't leave us for the anniversary after he accused me of cheating on him. Cheating with his own uncle. I won't go for it. Maria said no. So you're on your own, Maria. But you're an adult, Maria, like a snake, whispered mother-in-law. But if you won't be at the anniversary, everyone will think it's true. And if you come, so Robert won't blabber in anger, you'll prove to everyone that you've always been faithful to him. You're a good wife. Maria didn't understand why. But she agreed again. Lily's arguments were so obvious that she just gave up. All right, Maria finally said. I will come to the anniversary as Robert's wife, and that will be my last role. But I'm not going back to my husband's apartment. Maria, my dear, thank you. Robert's mother was filled with gratitude. I promise you that my son will not persecute you anymore. The main thing is that you will be present at his anniversary as his wife. and then you can file for divorce. Maria felt threatened again after talking to her mother-in-law. She called Eugene, who had left her his phone number today. "Maria, I wouldn't do that if I were you," he replied excitedly. "But on the other hand, maybe for people like them it will be the last chance. In any case, if you feel you are in trouble, or if you don't even have anyone to talk to, call. Anything I can do to help." Robert's anniversary was just days away. Maria had calmed down a bit by then. She was living in a rented apartment, and her confidence was slowly returning. The day before the anniversary, she received a phone call from Robert. "Hi, Maria." He greeted his wife in a gentle voice. "Are you ready? I cannot without you." Her husband laughed out loud. "I'll pick you up tomorrow." "Give me your address then. Robert will meet at the restaurant." Indifferently, the wife replied, "You don't have to meet me. I'll drive myself." "All right," agreed the man. "What time should I expect you?" "Let's make it 7:30. Robert could hardly control himself. He had so much on his plate lately that he could hardly cope with it all. His mill, you might say, was almost up. After Eugene found out about the arson, Robert took no more risks to his delight. Luckily for him, his uncle never filed a report on him. Money was running out very quickly, and he was struggling to make ends meet to give Vanessa anything. The last one was starting to weaken on him. It wasn't a big problem for Robert. The man wasn't stupid. He knew how to play with women like that, but the game had to be according to his rules. Naturally, he promised the girl Golden Mountains, like all her predecessor. But he always gave his mistresses a little money only for pocket money. "Vanessa, we are now engaged in a reorganization of our mill," he said. "Girls, so you'll have to be patient for about 6 months. And then we'll have very good earnings, and we'll buy you a car right away. Robert, there's no question about it. Vanessa, of course, I love you so much and I'll wait for you. But my favorite everything will be fine," answered the man and kissed her. "No, but it can't be." Robert used several tricks to get out of a relationship. One of them, the most common, was to accuse his beloved of cheating. The man usually presented some kind of irrefutable evidence. He'd also used this method on his wife. The mistress then tried for some time to prove her innocence. But Robert always remained adamant. "The only thing I can't forgive," he always told his new mistress, "was betrayal." His conscience never nodded him. That his own rule he was always breaking. It's all about others obeying the law he's laid down. That's why this trick worked very well. That's how he discovered most of his mistresses. For some are more vain and arrogant. He used the story of illness or situations where he was losing everything. Such women were especially not going to sacrifice their lives for a sick or penniless lover. They would immediately stop having any contact with him. "Beloved, I do not even know how to tell you, but I have found a very serious disease." With tears in his voice, he said, "And if I do not get a very expensive medicine, then in the coming months I will simply die. I ask you, for the sake of our love, to help me." Those were the last words Robert would say, and the girl would disappear from his life forever. There was another game he had, but it was a game the man played very rarely. Such girls on his way did not come across so often. Robert would just start stalking the girl. He kept blackmailing her that he would kill himself, that he couldn't live without her. It usually worked well with those who especially didn't want a family or a serious relationship. Such girls loved bodily pleasures and money, but they didn't want to take responsibility for them. Robert realized that Vanessa would be out of his life sooner or later, but the man had one very strict rule, which he never broke. All his mistresses were abandoned only by himself. None of them could leave him first. It was some kind of delusion or inferiority complex. But Robert never allowed a girl to leave first. Even if the initiator of the breakup was a mistress, he returned her by any means, and then he himself left. Many times the man asked himself the question why he married Maria. But he didn't know the answer. His wife was very devoted, and that was exactly what the man had always dreamed of. From the outside, it seemed completely schizophrenic. But Robert actually dreamed of such a woman who would be faithful to him always, while he would cheat on her. Robert's birthday came. Maria had been walking around with no mood since morning. It was Saturday, and she was idle. First here and there, not even wanting to look at her closet. Maria closed the chief, and actually would like to come there in a house robe, congratulate Robert, and leave. But that's not going to work. I'd have to stay there for at least 3 hours. Maria tried to watch TV, but all her attention was absorbed by the upcoming holiday. She picked up the phone. "Oh, Lucy, I have a bad feeling," Maria complained to her friend. "If you only knew how much I don't want to go there." "Maria, but this is your last fight. It's always the hardest." Her friend backed her up. "After this, you'll never see them again, and you'll have a new life. You think with doubt in your voice," she said. "They've got me so brainwashed that I don't believe in anything anymore," Maria sighed. "I never thought I would want this day to vanish so badly. You just have to set your mind to it. No matter what happens, you're ready to learn your lesson. Tune Maria Lucy out, no matter what they do. You're going to get through this, and there will finally be a white streak in your life. God never gives a trial unless a person is ready for it. And that means no matter what happens. You ready for this? Break a leg, as they say. You're going to give me a coven after this. Make sure you call me." Talking to Lucy had given the woman some confidence. She sat on the couch and thought about her words. "Which means I'm actually willing to go through with this," she said loudly. "No matter what happens, I will definitely make it through." Maria put on her weekend blue dress, let her hair down, and applied light makeup. She was beautiful. Maria didn't bother hiding her hair under a hat. She just threw her coat hood over her head. She didn't want to drag herself across town on public transportation and hailed a cab. But with God, she said to herself, and dictated to the cab driver the address of her destination. Her husband was waiting for her outside the restaurant. It was obvious that he was very worried. Robert immediately ran up to his wife and helped her out of the cab. "Maria, we need to stick together today instead of saying hello," he said. "Whatever it is, Robert, happy birthday," she said with a smile. "May the gift for you be that I came here at all, and that's the best gift for me." Quickly her husband answered her. "Well, let me take you under my arm. We should enter the restaurant together." Maria felt her husband's hand touching her. The woman was immediately knocked upside down. Abdullah was cold. Her whole body began to tremble. "Maria, are you afraid?" Robert looked at her in surprise. "What are you doing?" "Everything will be fine." He patted her hand. Maria didn't answer anything. She did not fully understand what was happening to her. She really wanted to break free and run away. When the couple entered, Lily immediately ran up to them. She was playing the role of loving and caring mother-in-law. "Maria, Robert, come on in. We'll be starting soon." She greeted the children. Maria looked around. The anniversary had indeed been planned in a big way. Half of the tables were already occupied. Judging by the way people were dressed, most of them were, by the standards of a provincial town, quite wealthy or middle class, so to speak. She tried to estimate in her mind, and she got 50 people. And where did she get so much money? The daughter-in-law thought to herself, as long as I've known her. She was always whining that she didn't even have enough money for a piece of bread. Lily was going to be 60 years old this year, but despite her age, she remained a woman, prominent. Eugene was nothing like her. Not that the man wasn't handsome. It's just that his sister was short, dark-haired, and good-looking. His brother, on the other hand, was a tall, skinny blonde with dark blue eyes. Lily paced back and forth, showing off her slender figure and a few gold rings on her fingers, which she deliberately adjusted every now and then. Probably gifts from her former lovers, a thought quickly ran through Maria's mind. Finally, by 7 o'clock, everyone had gathered and the anniversary began. The festive program was led by a special team. Every now and then they brought a microphone to someone and let the person speak. "Dear Robert," one of the guests stood up. "I don't even know what words I can use to express my gratitude to fate for the fact that one day you were met by the hired Lily." The actor sang dithyrambs to the birthday boy for half an hour. Finally, he recited by heart the entire text that Robert's mother had prepared for him, and wiping in sweat from his face the fatigue. Everything was going well. The people were having fun. Maria drank a little wine and inner tension. Torturing her neck all this time let go a little. She ate. An hour and a half passed and Maria wanted to get up and leave. Suddenly, Lily took the microphone in her hands. "Dear friends," she began, "I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I really do have a wonderful son. And the words that we heard today say that all the trials, all the hardships that I went through in my life were not in vain. I put so much effort into my boy, and everyone who knows him can call him a man with a capital letter. And as a mother, I'm very happy. But there is one circumstance that overshadows not only my son, but also me. Unfortunately, Maria, my daughter-in-law, could not appreciate what my son did for her. She played with my boy for almost 10 years. I'm sorry, but I can't take it anymore. Maybe by telling this story in public, she'll finally have the conscience to let our family go." Maria turned pale. She wanted to get up and walk away, but her legs stopped working. Not only can't Maria have children, Lily continued. She had dishonored her family at a young age by getting pregnant by a married man. Her father forced her to have an abortion when she was 15. And my favorite son has been hoping for a miracle all these years. If you only knew how much Robert loves children. But this sensual Maria cheated on my son all these years. And if you only knew with whom, with my own brother Eugene. Since Maria cannot have children, she did it absolutely fearlessly. But my brother finally realized her devious plan, and Maria dumped him. So now she's trying everything she can to keep Robert from leaving her. My sister-in-law is playing the good wife, and now I'm bringing it all to your attention. As a mother, I can no longer bear to see my son suffer. I ask you to condemn this woman. What's the use of such a daughter-in-law? Hired men have entered the fray. Send her away. Maria felt a lump of anger rise to her throat, and she wanted to shout at the top of her voice that none of this was true. But to her surprise, she calmly got up from the table, and without looking back, left the restaurant. Eugene, are they crazy? Maria sobbed into the phone. How can you lie so brazenly? And this was to be expected, sighed the man. Maria, wait for me, I'm coming to get you. He switched to the first name. Bastards. I was cursing to myself, Gianni. You think you're not under the law? That's all right. God will get you too. 40 minutes later, Eugene found Maria in the park by the old fountain. The woman's eyes were swollen with tears. But it's all over now. He hugged her. Now it's definitely over. He can't take you anymore. The man came to Maria in old work clothes, put her in the car, and they drove to the mill. Maria, you take a walk here. We have an urgent order to finish today, and then we'll go somewhere else. You shouldn't be alone right now. Eugene and his men finished work at 10. The customers were paid very well that day, despite what his sister and nephew had arranged today. The man realized Robert was out of his mill and wouldn't last long. I wonder, and what will they do next? Pondered the man, the tractor, and the sacks. Would they have the conscience to ask for money? My birthday party ended exactly as Lily had planned. Everyone felt sorry for her and Robert, and the very last words were about tearing it down. Thank you for such an amazing evening. Shaking the woman's hand was the head of Lily's TSA. Do you need to hang on? I think after everyone found out about your daughter-in-law, she won't blackmail your son anymore, and he can finally divorce her. The man bent down to her ear and whispered softly, I'll visit you one of these days. We'll discuss everything then, he winked at the woman. Despite such a dizzying success and euphoria, Lily and Robert did not last long. After 2 weeks, the man was forced to close his mill. He began to have serious problems with his mistress. You know, Robert, you've been lying to me all this time. Vanessa declared to him, I was at your work today. You closed the mill. So you don't have any money and you won't anytime soon. Vanessa, yeah, we moved. Robert tried to save the day. We're in a different part of town now. Don't lie. The girl shouted angrily. I was told you were bankrupt. Get your things and get out of my apartment. She yelled at the top of her voice. Vanessa, darling. Robert tried. Didn't you tell me you couldn't live without me? Only if you had enough money. Vanessa answered frankly. And I don't need a beggar like you. That's it. From this day on, I'm dead to you. Robert came home in a rage. He threw his things all over the apartment in anger. Mom's run of the mill and it's over. He called Lily. Because of that black bastard, I've lost everything. How am I gonna live now? Robert, son, I'll think of something. It's cold, Mother said. Well, don't you panic. I've got a couple of sponsors in mind. So we'll organize something soon. But a month passed, then 2 months, then 6 months. And Lily and her son were still not getting along. Mom, I already owe everyone. Robert was cursing. I'll have to sell the apartment soon. When you do something about it. Did you do anything about it? His mother got mad at him. You've been hanging on my neck all your life. See, I can't do anything either. That damn director, and you're so greedy? Not a penny to me. I'm trying my best to give the co-owner of the gas station a break. But he only gives me pocket money. Maybe you should ask Eugene for money. My son suggested it. You'll cry, he'll forgive you and give you money. I heard his mill's so big, he's making a lot of money. That's out of the question. I'm not going to ask that bastard for anything. It's beneath me to bribe him. But 3 months later, when she and her son were left afloat without any means of subsistence, Lily made a pained face and drove to her younger brother's house. But I'll show you now. She scolded to herself. My son is bankrupt because of you, so you'll pay him back every penny. The cab stopped outside the big house. Lily pressed the bell. Who is it? A familiar voice sounded and the woman shuddered. I'll be right there. About 5 minutes later, Maria came out into the street. She was holding her big belly with her hands. You're in shock. Her ex-mother-in-law looked at her. What are you doing here? I live here. Maria laughed. What brings you here? Do you want your husband? My wife for you. Favorite relatives are here, she joked. Lily was completely defeated, and she realized it. But an inner impulse compelled her to fight to the end. Eugene, she threw herself, with tears in her eyes, on her brother's neck. My beloved brother. But let's not make a scene. Eugene took her hands away. You must be in a bad way. If you overcame your pride and came to me, Eugene, I'm so sick, continued to play comedy. Sister, I don't have long left. For everything, I'm sorry. I'm just now starting to realize what I've done. Please, I'm sorry. I wish I hadn't died with such a heavy burden. God will forgive, shortly replied the brother. Goodbye, Lily. Now forever. Coldly, he said. Will you leave me in distress? Lily burst into tears. I'm in such hellish pain. I need expensive medicine. Yes. Eugene turned around and looked at his sister one last time. Let your son treat you. He closed the door and went into the house. After Lily embarrassed her sister-in-law at the birthday party, Maria somehow waited until the end of the workday, and she and Eugene went to his house. The time was already late. The cafes were closed. Maria, if you want, you can stay at my place after dinner. If not, I'll take you home and pay for a cab, the man offered. Eugene, thank you for everything. But I need some time to myself, Maria answered alone. I have to cry until all this pain and tears go away. You've done so much for me already. I understand you, sighed the man. Unfortunately, people like that have no brakes. They think they can say anything they want and nothing will happen to them. You know, I've watched this phenomenon so many times, and I've realized that they believe what they say. They simply have no other choice. If they don't believe all this nonsense, it means only one thing to them, that they are lying. And that is a claim to their perfection. They can't allow that. So they have to believe their own nonsense. It doesn't matter if they look crazy to others. You know, it's the first time I meet such people, or at least in such extreme degree. While drinking hot tea, Maria said, They seem to be normal people on the outside, and you expect them to act adequately. And when it doesn't happen, you can't figure out what's wrong. That's the hardest part for me. It turns out that not all people are good and kind. There are some who willfully want to destroy you, and for no reason at all. But what have I done to them? There's no reason for Robert or his mother to treat me like this, as I told you. Eugene looked at her. There's only one way to leave them alone, and not to get involved with them in any way. You need to learn to just ignore them. They are nothing. They're just nothing. But they're very sensitive about it. How can anyone not validate their importance? They're not important. They're no different from you or me. So always presenting them as nothing, let them make up whatever they want. With their sick imaginations, you can make up anything. You just know that they mean nothing to you. After that day, Eugene started calling Maria every day. They had common topics of conversation. In fact, it seemed to Maria that Eugene had just saved her. There was some truth in that. He showed her what she had not wanted to notice before. After a few months, Genia and Maria became good friends. They sometimes went to cafes and constantly discussed things at work. Maria was very easy with Genia. 2 more months passed, and she began to feel that her new acquaintance was not just a friend for her. Maria immediately panicked. You see, as Eugene once said, I'm 50 years old. And after Lena was gone, I never looked at any woman again. I wasn't really interested in anyone. I even thought I'd die a bachelor, but you changed everything. I need you. Eugene, trying to keep it together. Maria, you're my best friend. I'll be honest with you. I feel something more for you, but I'm afraid. Then we'll just have to wait. The man looked her in the eye, and that's something we both know how to do. But the waiting didn't last long. 2 weeks later, Maria told Eugene, and they signed right away. Their wedding was more like a friend's dinner that the lovers organized for their people at the mill. Not 2 months later, Maria realized she was pregnant. Eugene, it's just some kind of miracle. The woman couldn't believe the news. God, I've waited so many years for this. Well, it won't be the last. Her husband kissed her. I'm still going strong. So we'll plan for at least 2. But I'd like a 3rd. You let me at least this one, laughed the wife. You know, as I fear, everything will be fine. Beloved, hugged her husband. My darling, how happy am I? After his sister came to Eugene, it was as if the last thin thread had broken and no longer with Maria. Business was booming. The owner of the mill opened 2 new shops for the production of fodder. He had good people working for him, and he did not insult them with wages. The first child Maria gave birth to was a boy. After him immediately Weather and came in a girl. Then the couple had a 2-year break, and their twins, 2 mischievous hooligans, were born. Maria, you even outdid me. Laughing at your sister brother. You probably waited until you were almost 36 years old to set records. We're Estonian, and we gave birth to 3. And you and Eugene are just like pies to find them. I'm not surprised your twins won't be the last. That's good, his father said. Let at least a soccer team be born. After all, the main thing is that our Maria finally got her happiness.